Yes, sir, man. So we're gonna get right into it, man. Sorry for you know what I mean, making y'all wait for this much anticipated moment. You know what I mean? We here. We've been talking about it for a little minute now. You know, all of the parties is in the building. And I mean, I think everybody pumped up, man. You know, we got the crowd in the building, everybody coming in here. I'm gonna give a shout out to my co-host Juju. Let you get
Yeah.
in real quick. What's happening with you, girl?
Oh, you already know what it is. We about to get it in for this, what we calling it, intelligent conversation for real. This is the final showdown.
Yes, indeed.
Definitely the final showdown. That's pretty much all I gotta say. I did my part. I'm gonna let y'all do the work.
Hey, we get out of here, man. Fall back. Fall back.
Nah,
Nah, just-
I'm just gonna sit here and smile.
hey, man. Without further ado, man, we got the moderator Brass in the building.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm gonna let you go ahead and do the introduction, bro. Shout to Sirius B, King Sosa, Mac Rob. Big shout out to brother Unc, man. He'll be in soon. But we gonna go ahead and get it started, man. We gonna keep y'all waiting no longer, man. Hey, Brass, it's on you, brother.
Well, first off, I'm very fired up. Always appreciate the opportunity to do something like this on the platform. So first off, respect to the Pseudo Killas. We're gonna have an intelligent conversation. We have a lot of conversations, like I said, that are private in our Discord that we're deciding to make public so you can see it. And this is one of the first ones, as far as since I've been in Pseudo Killers, that is going to be judged. It's going to be timed. There will be a definitive winner, and I think that'll be exciting. So I'm gonna get right into it. First, on the hard determinism side, we're gonna do some bookkeeping real quick. First, on the hard determinism side, we have Chilembwe, Marcus Chilembwe. He'll be representing hard determinism tonight. So I'm speaking to the crowd right now. On the compatibilism side, that'll be represented by Logic. There'll be a breakdown of time, opening statements, 10 minutes, presentations, 15 minutes each. The discourse of 15 minutes. Then we'll take some questions from the contestants, and then we'll take questions from the panel, and then about 5 minutes for closing statements. So before we get started, though, I want to just go over the rules. So can y'all both hear me right now?
Yep.
Okay. First off, I just want you to understand. First off, congratulations. You know, I respect anybody that gets in the ring. Anybody, if you decide to actually get on YouTube and compete, you know, I always harken back to the man in the arena, that poem. So, first off, I want to set the clear rules. I encourage respect. So I want to have a respectful yet focused discussion. If I ask you to stop. Don't do a lot of questioning. Just understand I'm just here to do my particular job. You do your job. Equal participation. You're each going to have equal speaking opportunities to speak. My job is just to guide the discussion along with Sosa, just to time the discussion. Make sure you summarize your points clearly. You respect the time limit. Stay on topic. Do not interrupt each other. You'll actually lose some scoring for that. And substantiate your claims. For the crowd, I just want y'all to understand what we're actually talking about, just to give you a little bit of history. Determinism. Everything, including our choices, is predetermined by past events and laws of nature. Compatibilism. We can still have free will, even if our choices are determined by past events. This conversation has been going on since ancient times. Philosophers like Epicurus, thinkers like St. Augustine, you know, in the Enlightenment era, science brought determinism into the spotlight, with Hume discussing its coexistence with free will, modern philosophy with Kant, and today's discussions with Sapolsky, Sam Harris. These are new discussions for our time, and we're just having these discussions because we can. You know, we have the ability to think concisely and freely, because this is the United States. So we're going to get started first. Logic, you lost the coin toss. Your lack of free will messed you up with the coin toss. But without any further ado, I'm going to give you 10 minutes to give your opening statement. And starting, Sosa, tell me if you're ready.
I want to screen
Hold
first.
on. Sosa, tell me. Okay, go ahead. What'd you say, Logic?
I said I want to share my screen. The way I put my presentation of my all my premise and all that was in slides. So
okay, so is it in the opening statement? You need to share your screen for your opening statement.
So for my
hold on. What'd you say, Sosa?
Listen, I start the time when you start your presentation. So you
okay, yeah, when you start talking, that's when we start.
Okay.
All right, you got 10 minutes.
I gotta start this conversation off
Wait, did you share your screen yet? Hold on 1 second. Did you share your screen yet?
Not just yet. I'm about to press it. The same way Daniel Dennett started it off when he was addressing Robert Sapolsky when they had a debate, right? And he told Robert, he said, "You have become daft. You've been listening to philosophers for so long that it's starting to impact the way that you actually see the world." And I think that's a great interpretation of exactly where I want to start this off at, right? And I want a little crowd participation to begin, because I think the whole conversation starts off very accurately with a quote from a philosopher named Lindwig Wittgenstein. And what he says is, when I raise my arm and my arm goes up, a problem arises. So what is left behind when I subtract the fact that my arm goes up from the fact that I raise my arm? Very interesting. I think that really encapsulates exactly what this conversation is, because once you begin to answer that question, the only reasonable answer I can come up with is me. That's what is left behind from when my arm goes up from the fact that I raise my arm. So here I am. I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see, window share. Boom. Right. I'm gonna take a naturalistic version of compatibilism, right? Our dispositions are not voluntary in the same sense that our actions are. A much needed scientific approach to this conversation of free will, right? I already went into Wittgenstein. Okay, for a wide class of physical theories, proposed set of laws of nature, if they can be viewed as deterministic at all, they can be viewed as bidirectional deterministic. Forward-looking determinism then entails that these past states beyond our control, perhaps occurring long before humans even existed, right? So it goes back to the Big Bang. So there is this is actually caused by the Big Bang. All our actions today determine everything that we do in our lives is determined from the Big Bang. But in making vivid the threat of determinism, we often want to fasten on the idea of the entire future of the world as being determined, no matter what the speed limit on physical influence is. If we want the entire future of the world to be determined, then we have to fix the state of things all over space, not only to miss out something that can later come in from outside to spoil things. And I'm sourcing that from Stanford Philosophy Encyclopedia. I'm gonna be doing that once or twice. Determinism is a substantive empirical claim that no one, certainly no ordinary person, knows whether it is true. It appears then that if we presuppose the principle of alternate possibilities in ordinary life, we should, for the time being, withhold judgment on whether any person is responsible for his or her actions, cautiously awaiting the verdict from scientists on the question of determinism. Principle of alternate possibilities: a person is morally responsible for what he or she does only if she could have done otherwise. Again, from the encyclopedia. So Martin Luther King quoted, "Here I stand, I can do no other." If we take this word for word, Martin Luther King was compelled by his conscience Yet we still praise him for refusing, in spite his inability to do otherwise. Indeed, his being compelled by conscience, may chance our moral admiration. So I put that in there, right? Because I understand that determinism, right? Where does determinism fit in giving the appropriate admiration for deeds that Martin Luther King did? If he's not responsible for his actions, then what are we praising him for, right? Very, very interesting question. I'm just going to quickly move on, right? Defining free will is a very, very tricky free from what exactly? I think that's a very good question. One way to formalize the intuitive idea of free action is to say that people act freely if it's true that they could have acted otherwise. The problem of reconciling the belief that free will, that belief that people are morally responsible for what they do, with the apparent fact that humans do not have free will because their actions are causally determined, is an ancient and enduring philosophical puzzle. Determinism. In philosophy and science, the thesis that all events in the universe, including human decision actions, are causally inevitable. Determinism entails that in situation in which a person makes a certain decision or performs a certain action, it is impossible that he or she could have made another decision or performed any other action. In other words, it is never true that a person could have decided to act otherwise than they did. That's a pretty strong statement. I mean, that is a very, very strong statement. So that's basically saying that nothing that you have done in the future or the past could have been prevented. Compatibilism. As the name suggests, it is the view that the existence of free will or moral responsibility is compatible with the truth of determinism. In most cases, compatibilists attempt to achieve this reconciliation by subtly revising or weakening the common sense notion of free will. Aristotle believed that humans have free will because they are free to choose their actions within the confines of their natures. In other words, humans are free to choose between limited alternatives presented to them by their dispositions. Humans may not be free to a great extent, as the intuitive notion of free will suggests, but there is no other freedom to be had. Addressing the problem of free will and moral responsibility requires establishing guidelines for holding people accountable, not lunging after some impossible notion of free will. That is exactly what I plan to do today, right? I am not attempting to lunge after some impossible notion of free will that says that I have to be free from biology, that says I got to be making decisions outside of nature, that says I need to be making decisions outside of, I'm not sure what else Marcus will come up with, but inside of those constraints, I do have enough control over my actions to be held accountable for them, right? And one of the really, really good examples that science will tell us is cognitive control, right? A set of cognitive processes that are necessary for the cognitive control of behavior, selecting and successfully monitoring behaviors that facilitate the attainment of chosen goals. Executive functions include basic cognitive functions such as attentional control, cognitive inhibition, inhibitory control, working memory, and cognitive flexibility. Attentional control, colloquially refers to as concentration, refers to an individual's capacity to choose what they pay attention to and what they ignore. So I do have the option to ignore based on the definition. I don't have to. I'm not obligated to only respond to our external stimuli based on the definition. It is also known as endogenous attention or executive attention. Endogenous means it means internally motivated. It means it's completely coming from me, from my internal factors, right? Inhibitory control. Inhibitory control is also known as response. Inhibition is a cognitive process more specifically, an executive function that permits an individual to inhibit their impulses and nature, inhibitor, or dominant behavior responses to stimuli. Another example of how cognitive control is not reduced to me having to give in to external stimuli, which is a big part of this argument. An inhibitory control test is a neuropsychological test that measures an individual's ability to override their natural inhibition or dominant behaviors response to a stimulus in order to implement more adaptive goal-oriented behaviors. Again, just if I'm only able to respond, if I'm only responding to external stimuli, what are they measuring? How can they possibly put a measurement on my ability to control my cognition? Very interesting question. But that's what determinism says. A loss of cognitive control is attributed to disease or disorder. Executive functions are impaired in multiple disorders, including anxiety disorder, major depression disorder, bipolar disorder, attention deficit, hyperactive disorder, schizophrenia, and autism. Lesions in the prefrontal cortex, such as in the case of Phineas Gage, may also result in deficits of executive function. Damage to these areas may also manifest in deficits of other areas of function, such as motivation, such as social functioning. So basically what this is saying is that in a healthy brain, right, they would not be putting you in the same category as people who have disorders or people who aren't able to display inhibitory control, people who aren't able to show the same level of cognitive control or executive functions. That's very important. Say what?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Environmental dependency syndrome is some extreme cases. Environmental dependency syndrome, also called Zelig syndrome. Syndrome is the name. Where affected by individuals and environmental cues in order to accomplish their goals. It is a disorder of personal autonomy, right? So this person actually loses autonomy when they have environmental dependency. Another extreme case is the alien hand syndrome. This is a category of conditions where a person experiences their limbs acting seemingly on their own without conscious control over their actions. Affected persons may sometimes reach for objects and manipulate them without wanting to do so. So this is a person actually acting outside of their own volition. They have no control of their actions.
Time.
I think you did an amazing job. I don't know what's up with this wild picture, but I think he did an amazing job. I think the pictures were amazing, kind of along the lines of the flyer. I like how you talked about endogenous and executive action, some of the experiments. Phineas Gage, that's definitely something we've been talking about in the Discord, and I like that alien hand syndrome. That's something that you haven't brought up before, so I appreciate the look. So I want to welcome Chilembwe to the stage. That's not Chilembwe. 1 second while they work it out. Marcus, you there? Touch your mic.
Yeah. Y'all see me?
Yes, sir. So I want to just, yes, you're clear. Okay, I want to say also, we're going to get into how it's being scored a little bit later, but I want to get into some of that information before we go forward, if you don't mind, Marcus.
Sure, go right ahead.
So, opening statements, there will be a poll for the chat. So the chat, definitely pay attention. You're going to have the opportunity to do the first scoring. You're not going to find out the overall winner tonight. We're going to be doing that show on Sunday in the normal slot for the Brain Show, because this is a judge debate. We have 3 judges. They're going to be going over the debate for the next day or so, and then we'll announce the actual winner on Sunday. But tonight, the chat will get the opportunity to weigh in and give their winner. So that'd be something like the People's Champ. The opening statements would be 10 points. So that's what you saw with Logic about the C. Chilembwe's. I'm only going to get into the first 4. Evidence and research, solid backing of the arguments with credible sources and data. Logical reasoning would be 20 points, and then the rebuttal would be 15. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to get it in, and then I'm gonna back off, and then and let you cook. First off, I want to say I appreciate you, Marcus. You helped me a lot in this conversation. And good luck to you. The same as I would say to Logic. And Sosa, you ready with the clock?
Yeah. And Marcus says he got a little extra run in the beginning. I'm gonna allow you that same leeway so the time balance is fair. You know?
I won't eat it. Can you share
All
my
right.
screen?
All right.
And
Is it sharing? Is my screen sharing?
Good, bro. Yeah, you
Okay,
good.
thank you. So I'm going to begin with just going over my position. I have this outlined, and we'll go from there. I kind of expected that response from Logic. I appreciate it. He brought up some valid points. I believe we're going to be able to discuss that shortly. So we are conscious of only a tiny fraction of information that our brain processes in each moment. That's Sam Harris' free will. That's going to be one of my main sources that I use. My position is the notion of free will, often perceived as objective concept, is ultimately subjective conjecture, and it does not align with determinism in every sense relevant to human behavior. So let me begin by clearly defining terms. While some may not approve of my said definitions, I will be solely working from these established terms. Free will in philosophy and science, the supposed power or capacity of humans to make decisions or perform actions independently of any prior event or state of the universe. That's very key. That's independent from perform actions independently of any prior event and or state of the universe. Arguments for free will have often been based on subjective experience of freedom, on sentiments of guilt, on revealed religion, and on common assumptions of individual moral responsibility. The ability to act, that was Britannica, the ability to act, make choices independently outside influence. That's how Cambridge Dictionary puts it. Free will is the notional capacity or ability to choose different possible courses of action unimpeded. Wiki. Kristen Liss is a known advocate for free will. He wrote a book. I'm going to give you his analysis of it. Why Free Will is Real states, free will on first gloss is the agent's capacity to choose and control his or her own actions. Sometimes this is called freedom of action or freedom of choice, but I will use free will as the conventional term. According to Oxford Dictionary website, it is the power of acting without constraint of necessity or fate, the ability to act at one's own discretion. Based on these definitions, free will is simply the ability to perform actions without prior cause, without impedance, and or eternal influence. Cause is how they usually frame it. Thomas Hobbes famously said that man is as free as an unimpeded river. A river that flows downhill necessarily follows a channel, but is also at liberty to flow within a channel. This is what compatibilists are going to attempt to bring. Soft determinism, also known as compatibilism, is a belief that determinism is compatible with free will and moral responsibility. In other words, soft determinism states that even though all events in the world are predetermined by what came before them, it is still possible for people to have free will and thus be morally responsible for their actions. Psychology, simply psychology. Soft term or compatibilism is the position or view that causal determinism is true, but we still act free as moral responsible agents in the absence of external constraints or actions are caused by our desires. Compatibilism is a determinism with a slight modification for the sake of appearance and for language use. It is a position taken because of the perceived need to have some idea of accountability and responsibility for human behavior. That is the only difference between a point. Compatibilism is solely basing on we don't want to accept free will being an illusion or not true, because we have a responsibility to hold people morally accountable for their actions. To show you that, I'm going to go to a compatibilist who's going to say the same thing. There has been quite a course of eminent scientists saying point blank that free will is an illusion. Neuroscientists Wolf Singer, Chris Frisch, and Patrick Haggard, who is going to come into this discussion later. Psychologists Paul Bloom, Dan Wagner, and a few other well-known regarded physicists, Stephen Hawking and Albert Einstein. Could so many brilliant scientists be wrong? Many, not all, maybe not most. But philosophers say, yes, they say this is a job for philosophy. Are they right? I think so. But here's the key in that same section. What he accuses the free will deniers is they are making the mistake people make when they say nothing is ever solid. Not really. They are using an unreconstructed popular concept of free will when they should be adjusting it first. So we now have a clear understanding. Compatibilists are the ones who are saying change the definition so we can hold to these moral ideas that we have.
4 minutes, boss.
Sam Harris, Howard, free will is compatibilist, defend not free will. That most people, they feel they have. Compatibilists generally claim that a person is free as long as he is free of any outer or inner compulsions that would prevent him from acting on his actions. Sam Harris, free will. Hard determinism, this is very key. Is a view that free will holds that determined is true and that incompatible is free, and therefore free will does not exist. Hard determinists think that human actions are causally determined by laws of nature and initial conditions. At any moment, the state of your brain and your environment, together with principles that govern behavior of matter, necessitate the way you will act. Sam Rumpton's philosophy is awesome. So here's an example. If you go to a cake store, something like that, a bakery, this is how determinism will look at it, right? They will look at one's past experience, genetic predispositions, the cafe presentation of cake, and even momentary physiological states. This is what we argue in determinism, hard determinism. You would look at genetics, biology, demographics, experience, personality, education, health, at a family level, exposure, religion, environment, availability, community. And then the system level would be media, seasons of the year, marketing, technology, even government policy, all play a role in how that would be. So this is a taste receptor. So you would see taste receptors as a prime example. You can go through this thing about chemical receptions. Basically, you have taste receptors in groups of 50 to 150. They become a taste bug, and every person has a wide variety of taste buds. It could be from 2,000 to 8,000, many as 500 in some cases, as much as 20,000 in other places. Healthy humans may have anywhere between 3 and several thousand. Taste perception can play a significant role in development of food preferences, taste buds. Genetic differences, taste receptors found in the oral cavity and throughout the gastrointestinal, these all play a role. This is how a determinist will look at it. Here's an example. You have afferent nerves, fibers on the axon. Sensory neurons carry sensory information, projections to areas of the brain. But here's the key. This is not new. Tactic behavior. Some receptors are sensitive to concentrations of chemicals in the environment, chemical receptors, while others are sensitive to light. Behaviors guided by chemicals are called chemotactic responses. By light, they're called phototactic responses. Here's the key. Many behaviors that pass for psychological or social interactions in complex organisms, like attraction to, avoidance of places and things based on odors, are actually accounted for by similar simple factors. Very sense. So what does that mean? If you think about it in the evolutionary sense, This is from J. Anthony Thomas. There's a craving that took place. We're going to look at this very clearly because we're going to come back to this, that during the evolutionary process, things happen to us. And through dictation, this is what it comes to. Pre-human primates had the same situation. You ever look about gout? This is where gout is coming from. It is the need for primates who ate high quantities of fruit. This created the cravings that we see today. The problem with that is that in order to store vitamin C and the sugars as fat, there was a mutation that took place that makes us have a difficult get rid of the acid that comes from it. Influence, another problem is you hear them say influence, but the definition of influence is very clear. Here goes some examples of it. The effect or change how someone or something develops and behaves. So here it is. I'm going to insert the definition of influence, and then we'll see. And a lot more is known about the factors that influence human behavior that is known even a few decades. But when you put the actual full definition in, that thing is very different. A lot more is known now about the factors that affect or change how someone or something develops, behaves, or thinks. And that is the determinist point. It is not whether you have free, and we're going to get into that. Let me get into this part right here. This is a transcendental argument. This you will hear all the time.
30 seconds, Marcus, then we can close. 30 seconds.
Okay. This is transcendental argument. This is what philosophers do. They assume that one position, they'll take a high position, right? And then manipulate it to another position. And so what they'll do is something like this. They'll say, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the earth, deep, and the Spirit of God moved across the face of water, and God said, let there be light. In a transcendental argument, right, God claimed his position X. We dispute that. They'll talk about heaven, earth exists, light exists, therefore X must also exist. But then the argument will be based on heaven and earth and light and never address the issue of what we're talking about. And what are we talking about? We're talking about, is the human will actually free?
Time.
Thank you.
Wow, man. Wow, amazing job. Both debaters came out swinging, fighting for their life. I appreciate it, Marcus. I like how you went into picking apart his actual argument. I saw compatibilism on the screen just as much as I saw determinism. I liked how you put the sources in with your slides. I think that's important for the crowd, important for scoring actually. And Magnolia Bakery, not Levain Bakery, is the best bakery in NYC, hands down. So I don't know where you got, but that is not a correct source. I loved your diagrams and I loved your sources. So we're out of the opening statement round. I want to get back into some of the scoring for the debaters. So we stopped at rebuttal. So understand, so we got logical reasoning, rebuttal, clarity of expression, use of rhetoric. But I also want you to understand cross-examination is 10 points. Your closing statement is 10 points. Adherence to time limits, which you're doing very well right now. And then your overall impact of your conversation. So I think you guys are doing very well. You're staying on topic. You're attacking each other's points, not attacking each other, which is very important in a debate like this. So Logic, you're going to get your presentation ready, correct?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, so in this particular round, what we're going to do, just give me 1 second, get my screen up. So we're out of the open statements. After the discourse, before we do the questions from contestants, we're going to take a little break, give you guys a chance to, the crowd to understand. So we are opening minutes. You have 15 minutes to do your presentation. Logic, do you need to share your screen?
Yep.
And Marcus, you're going to have to share your screen too, correct?
Yeah, can I ask one question? Is it two 15-minute rounds? Just need clarification, point of clarification.
No, what it is it's 15 minutes each for your presentation. So you'll have 15 minutes to present, and Logic will have 15 minutes to present, and then you'll have a 15-minute discourse back and forth with each other. And then I guess in that discourse you could develop your questions, because you'll get 3 questions each to ask each other. So the discourse is kind of like a build between the two of you.
Okay, no problem. I misread it. Let me y'all can go ahead. I'm just gonna make some minor adjustments.
Okay, no problem at all. All right, so Logic, are you ready to share your screen?
Yep.
First off, I want to give some appreciation to the chat. While you get your screen together, I don't want to do that. Shout piece to Anthony Bowman, Babylon Dunn, Sakina Ra, Miss Lisa, always, Zane, Gemini the Goddess, salute, American Dream, always for your support. So, and Joel showed my okay, thank you, Joel. I appreciate you, man. So, Logic, there you go. You got why are you showing me and you?
Is it showing me and you? It should be showing my screen right now.
No, it was showing YouTube. I just wanted, before we start your time, I want to make sure you right.
Let me make sure that's right then.
But no dead air.
What about this? Is that showing my source
screen? Right? Okay, there you go. Is that like okay? Is it a diagram? Okay.
Yep.
So you got 15 minutes to go. Go ahead and knock it out. Good luck, brother. And go ahead and get started.
Right. I noticed that on your presentation, Marcus, it says that we have consciousness of tiny fractures. I wonder if that leaves the window open for me to make conscious decisions, right? And I want to ask for some more audience and participation here. I wonder if any of you guys are able to take a deep breath right now, right? Because science actually says deep breath can probably reduce your blood pressure just a little bit, probably help you with some stress or anxiety control. And you'd be making a conscious action at that point. And that action would not necessarily be free from external stimuli, but it absolutely would be an endogenous or internally motivated action or volitional action, which I would also like to point out that I started by my presentation right there, where our dispositions are not voluntary in the same sense that our actions are. I think that's a really, really strong point, right? And another thing that I'm bringing back up again in my presentation, the principle of alternative possibilities, a person is morally responsible for what he or she has done only if he or she could have done otherwise. I think that's very, very important for me to be able to point out, is that a person actually does have the ability to do otherwise, right? Contrasting voluntary actions with reflex actions provides several useful neuroscientific pointers. Voluntary actions involve the cerebral cortex, whereas some reflexes are purely spinal. Voluntary volition matures late in the individual's development, whereas reflexes can be present at or before birth. Finally, voluntary actions involve two distinct subjective experiences that are generally absent in reflexes. These are the experience of intention, that is, planning to do or being about to do something, or the experience of agency, which is the later feeling that one's actions has indeed caused a particular external event. For example, a person who switches on the light may experience the intention to perform that action at a particular moment. When the light goes on, the person attributes this change to their action, so experience confirmation that they caused the external event. By contrast, when a physical or similar movement is evoked by a reflex, such as a knee jerk, in the experience of intention or control are both absent, right? So he's saying that they feel different, right? So if you go over to the light switch and turn it on, right, do you then begin to ask yourself who turned on the light switch? Right. So if I raise my arm up in the air and I lower it back down, am I asking myself who raised my arm? I don't think so, yo. That's what I mean by the conversation kind of gets a little bit unpragmatic. And what I mean by that is the practicality of the conversation begins to elude me personally, right? We'll get into that a little bit later. Humans and other animals readily learn the associated motor responses with arbitrary sensory stimuli, such as green or red lights, respectively, signaling go or stop. When a person starts crossing the road in a response to a green signal, the timing The timing and form of their actions is related to the stimulus. On the other hand, the action might not occur every time the stimulus occurs. Specifically, its occurrence depending on whether the person wants to cross the road, perhaps on the other person has a reason to do so. Therefore, response to external stimuli usually featuring both reflexes and voluntary actions. So Patrick Haggard, the expert, is absolutely not dismissing voluntary actions. He's saying that both reflexes and voluntary actions are necessary to be making decisions. Voluntary actions is better characterized as a flexible and intelligent interaction with an animal's current historical context than as an uncaused initiation of action. The basal ganglia and pre-SMA circuit plays a key role in this process. The pre-SMA is just the part of the brain that later on that they're going to attribute to people's voluntary actions. And I'm gonna get to that in a second. Let's see. Deciding between motor tasks seems to involve the prefrontal cortex, the frontal cortex. Evidence of this comes from two neuropsychological conditions that are seen in people with frontal lobe damage, particularly damage that involves pre-SMA. Patients who exhibited utilization behavior, compulsively grab and use objects in their immediate environment. Clinical reports suggest that they select as their task goal whatever is most salient in their current environment, even when the object is not specifically drawn to their attention. In patients with Antarctic hand syndrome, which is the same as alien hand, a unilateral frontal lesion, which is damage to their frontal lesion, leads to the contralateral hand automatically reacting to current stimuli. Contralateral is how neuroscientists see the brain activity. If you move your right hand, your left side of your brain is activated. And even when a patient explicitly states that they will not perform the action. Importantly, experimental studies of reaching show that even these patients are instructed to perform specific motor tasks. Movements of their affected hand are captured by competing tasks, such as reaching for distractions. So if there's something else that the alien hand is interested in, not you, that the alien hand might get distracted. So we talking about the alien hand having a mind of its own, not you. Moreover, action decisions made by patients with lesions in this area show unusual sensitivity to visual primes that are masked, so as to be imperceivable. In healthy control patients, flashing a brief mask prime before the reaction time task increased reaction times when the mask was compatible with the instructed stimulus, owing it's so small, man. Owing to automatic inhibition of the motor programs that is evoked by non-predictive and irrelevant primes. By contrast, in a patient with pre-SMA lesions, pre-SMA damage, mass primes sped up the subsequent motor responses that suggest that normal function in the pre-SMA to suppose automatic responding to the current environmental stimulation. So you actually do see science talking about automatic responses, not deliberate responses, but they are speaking about people who don't have control over their responses. So when determinism says that people are having these responses and they have no control of it, well, then they would have to fit into people with alien hand syndrome. They would have to fit into people with environmental dependency syndrome who have no inhibition, no cognitive control over these actions, right? In one model of cognitive control, voluntary actions that occur for any of these reasons will temporarily suspend the routine stimulus base control and switch the control of the motor apparatus from sensory to voluntary input. The behavioral corollary of this switch may be the finding that reaction times for making simple manual movement in response to a stimulus are higher when a stimulus occurring occurs during preparation to make the movement voluntary when there is no preparation for the voluntary action.
Six
So
and a half minutes.
what that is actually giving you the ability to do is to be able to switch your motor controls, right? It's saying it right there. You're able to switch your motor controls to voluntary. Now, that's what the neuroscientist is claiming that the brain has the ability to do. Deciding between motor tasks seems to involve the frontal cortex. Evidence for this comes from two neuropsychological conditions that are seen in people with frontal lobe damage, particularly the damage that involves the pre-SMA. Am I reading the same thing twice? I think I am. I'm sorry. There are at least three aspects to the phenomenal content of conscious intuition: timing, effort, specificity, and intention. Conscious intention seem to occur during the brief window approximately 1 second before the onset. They include specific details about the body part involved in the movement that will occur. Finally, conscious intentions clearly come by degrees. One can barely be conscious of one thing is going to take the next step when walking, but intensely be aware of pulling the trigger. The intensity dimension of consciousness intention has hardly been studied experimentally. However, clinical studies of patients with tic disorders describe premotory urges, the intensities of which increases before the tic behavior begins. And interestingly, these urges are body part specific and can even have a sensory characteristic. So what they're saying basically is that when you go to do something that may have a larger impact on the outcome, right, such as pulling the trigger, that you are going to see more conscious activity, right, quote unquote conscious activity, more deliberation. One of these two activities is definitely going to require more of your thought process. Moreover, the veto, I don't want to read that one. I'm going to skip that one. Okay. However, many neurological studies suggest that the main function of the pre-SMA is to inhibit actions rather than to cause them. Lesions to this area can produce automatic execution of actions in response to environmental triggers. For example, when a patient sees a cup, they will reach for it and attempt to drink it, even if they don't wish to. Again, they're talking about people who have damage to their brains, who aren't acting normal. So every time that they're talking about a person who has a lack of control of their functions, they're talking about somebody who has damage. When they're talking about a healthy brain, they're talking about people who have control over their actions. That's very interesting, because determinism actually says that ain't nobody got control over their actions. All your actions are predetermined, past, future, 1,000 years from now, at the Big Bang, you name it. That's what they're saying. But here we are right here looking at the science, and science ain't saying that. Several authors have viewed volition as a matter of internal generation or endogenicity of actions. Internally generated actions are typically contrasted to reactive situations in which movement is a response to external environmental stimuli. This approach identifies either two categorically distinct routes of action, or continuous dimension with multiple intermediate possibilities between the two extremes. So he's giving you options. There isn't a one option, right? One pole involves externally triggered responses, in which simple reflexes as one obvious example, and the opposite pole as sometimes being defined by exclusion, and an action that is not a reflex, right? So we can let you guys, or let the determinist describe whatever the opposite of a reflex is, but a reflex being an action that requires no thought process whatsoever. Yet definition by exclusion adds little positive information about what volition is. So that it being fair, in one view, volition may involve internally generated information regarding whether to make an action, what action to make, or when to make it. So either way, they're absolutely not taking options off the table. Your actions are not inevitable. Your actions are not predetermined, right? The stimuli is absolutely not controlling you. That's the main part of what he's saying. Volitional actions integrate across wide contexts, so it becomes hard to identify a single specific external trigger. Internally generated actions do not mean that the action occurs without nothing, but rather it is related to many things, right? In other words, in the words of Gold and Sheldon, such actions are not governed by the immediacy of sensory input or motory output. This freedom arises from a range and complexity in the information that is integrated to cause action. So there isn't no one specific thing that is causing one person to act. There just isn't, but that's what determinism says. Defining volition as goal-directedness has clear implications for underlying cognitive mechanisms. At the very least, the agent must have a representation of a goal, must attribute net positive value to the goal, and must realize that they are not currently in the goal state, but could attain this state through their own actions. These cognitive processes would then generate an action that aims to bring the goal closer, the goal state closer. So what he's saying is that you absolutely have to be making a rational decision, right? It's not completely about the reward system, that you actually can set your own goals in some sort of an abstract. For
time.
Fine. Okay.
Yeah. Good job, bro.
How much did I have left? Okay. Did I unshare?
Awesome. Yeah, awesome job. You unshared. You off the screen. I like how you went into science right there with the three aspects of conscious intention, the tic disorders, and the alien hand syndrome. So I appreciate that. And then how you attack determinism with the one specific thing, call for action. I want to remind the chat, we are going to be doing a poll. So keep up, pay attention, so that your vote could be unbiased and be the truth, pun intended. And Babylon Dunn, just to recognize you in the chat. I appreciate everything that you're doing in the chat, and I like the energy that you're giving off. Marcus, are you ready to go? Okay, you got 15 minutes to do your presentation, and then after that, we're gonna take a small break. Well, no, we'll do your discourse first, and then we'll do a small break. So after this, you'll have 15 minutes to discourse with Logic. So whenever you're ready, share your screen.
Is it sharing yet? Just let me know when you see it.
I will. Your screen is sharing right now.
Okay, so
go ahead, boss.
I'm going to zoom through this as fast as I can. I want to explain some things that we just seen. This is a straw man that compatibilist tries to do with the whole conversation about free will. What they'll do is they straw man. So here it is. A free will skeptic suggests that the lack of free will implies a lack of freedom in any other sense. That's not our claim. Freedom of will is different from social political rights granted, freedom any types of human coercion. Rather, free will skeptics are saying that the will isn't free from the variables that produce it, and that those variables ultimately stem from variables that are outside of the willer's control. They're not free either. The way we look at it is, does a prisoner have freedom? A compatibilist would say, of course they do. They can blink their eyes. And of course, we know that's not the context of the conversation. Here's a prime example, not understanding what determinism is. Determinism is dependent upon causality. The future is causally determined. What we think, say, do is part of that causal process. It does not lead to defeatism. And what we have affect on our future outcomes. example is if you're caused to recover from an illness, calling a doctor might be part of that causality. Likewise, if you're caused not to recover, not calling that doctor might be part of the causality. But either it is that you will be caused to recover from the illness, or you will be caused to not recover. Since calling a doctor might be causing you to recover, it's futile not to call a doctor. Another mistake, moral responsibility is not causal responsibility, and there is something called causal responsibility. The concept of moral responsibility applies quite broadly. In particular, the whole agent's morally responsible, both for their acts and for the outcome. Causal responsibility, on the hand, applies most fundamentally, if not exclusively, to outcomes. So you can have a responsibility, it don't have to be moral. But moral responsibility is connected to causal responsibility. Voluntary action, we just went through this. You can use the QR code to get the source. Anatomical descriptions refer to voluntary motor pathway centered on final path, common path through primary motor cortex. Neurophysiological accounts refer to internal generated as opposed to external generating of motor action. But I need you to get this. These accounts do not define the cause of internally generated actions. There are effectively definitions of exclusion. So what they're saying is it's not these type of actions, so it has to be this type of action. But they don't know the origins of the internally generated action, and we're going to touch on that shortly. I'm not going to get into this. This is just about philosophy and a methodological naturalism and what positions we hold. We're not the first to talk about philosophy in this context. Herbert Harrison and Philip Randolph were both considered philosophers. We must not confuse physical reality, such as changes of heart rate and widened eyes, with social reality. Social reality is not just about words. It gets under your skin. It's a perceived saying good, baked goods of a desiccant cupcake or a healthy muffin. Research shows that depending on your perspective, your body will respond differently. And you can look at that study right there, QR code right there for you. Two different things, physiological, social reality. Logic is arguing about the impacts of the social reality. I'm just going to deal with the evolutionary aspect. We live in a world with social reality. We're not the only ones. Chimpanzees, there's plenty of social animals in existence now. The process, conceptualization of social reality, here they're also known as experience, perception, pattern completion, perceptual inference, memory, simulation, attention, morality, and mental inferences. All these are encompassed by the associated neurons that create abstract thought. As I stated before, we do not control the mechanism that produce a brain, nor the mechanism that influence the mechanisms. Philosophers are interested in the question of personhood and of self, leave out much of who we are, all the non-conscious aspects. And in dividing the world into material objects, conscious selves, a person, Strawson did non-human animals placed in a kind of ontological limbo. In other words, animals have voluntary action too, but we don't call it free will. This is from a deep history of ourselves. Most efforts to understand evolution of behavior, especially neuroscience, typically focus on the relationship between closely related groups such as humans and other mammals. There's obvious reasons for doing so. For example, since the brain controls behavior, the brain, that's all we're talking about. The brain controls behavior. Studies show that the brain evolved in such groups to help explain the evolution and respective behavior repertoire. So evolution developed our behavior repertoire, and we're going to talk about two specific ones if I can get to it in time. That's from a deep history of ourselves. Now, here's what we're talking about. When I talk about this stuff, we're going to get into the science, right? A biologist, Theodore Dobzhansky, often said, nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. That includes human behavior. So here it is. The vertebrate NMDA receptor, also found in subunits of C-terminal dopamine. You can see the receptor down in the corner of the video. Domains up to 500 amino acids longer than invertebrates. The extension was specific to the NR2 subunit, occurred in a duplication and subsequent diversion of the NR2 in the vertebrate lineage. So when vertebrates and invertebrates diverged from each other, there was a duplication and there was a mutation and it kind of flipped. I forget the term they use in it, but it's in this thing right here. Oh, a divergence of the yeah. So that right there created excessive dopamine receptors in certain parts, and you can see it right there. We'll get to that later. I didn't get to touch that. We're going to get into why matter matters, the brain evolution, and brain mechanisms and functionality. The question of free will touches nearly everything we care about: morality, law, politics, religion, public policy, intimate relationships, feelings of guilt, personal accomplishment. Most of what is distinctly about human, about our lives, depend on our viewing one another as time to keep capable of free will. That's Sam Harris. So we fully understand the impact of what I'm saying. From the beginning of the Big Bang, the universe was hot and dense. It cooled, started to cool. You get the building blocks of matter, quarks and electrons, seconds, millions of a second later, quarks. Within minutes, you get proton and neutrons into nuclei. About 380,000 years, you get electrons. For electrons to be trapped around the orbits of nuclei. This is from CERN. These are the chemicals that came out of it. This is a beautiful sight. Thanks to Galaxy and Beyond show. We can see the periodic table, the elements in there. When we talk about prior state, this is what we're talking about. You can see our sun is a second, third generation star, rocky and metallic material we stand on. The iron in our blood, the calcium in our teeth, the carbon in our genes were produced billions of years ago in the interior of the red giant. We are star stuff. Calcium, this is example. This is how we do the test to see. He talked about looking at the tests, what are actually monitored in that prior state that we were talking about. That is calcium that came from them stars we were referring to. And you can see an example of that enzyme right there being shown in a neuron. Yes, that's true. This is another example. They use a different type of enzyme. You can look at the QR codes right there. Neurons run on calcium. Now, remember, we just talked about that one chemical that diverged. We're going to talk about that. From vertebrate to invertebrate, that divergence of the brain development. Yeah, we're going to get to that. Here's neuron impulses. Just came out 2021, a whole new one. And this gives you an even clearer definition of the calcium being used and potassium. It's a beautiful thing. They just came out with it 2 years ago. Vitamin minerals essential to humans. They play a vital part. But here's the thing. These in turn translate into effective cognitive physiological processes, including mental and physical fatigue. That means, yes, that your brain functions off of those pre-stated courses in the universe, those potassium, the iron, all that. When we talk about it, this is what we're talking about. Glial cells take potassium and spread it around your body. These slow shift aptitude to the level of arousal. That means when you get arousal, when you get excited, these glial cells spread it around. Click the QR code. Osmosis is another physical principle that we have. The laws that are involved in it, they play a role. Here we go. Now, dealing with the brain and osmosis, you can see the process of osmosis taking place in the video below, right? You could just think the last time you were thirsty, drink the glass of water. Within seconds of drinking the last drop, you probably felt less thirsty. This is part of the brain's predicting problem. This is what prediction probability, this is what it does. But it is not just humans that have a predicting brain. It's not just humans. Animals have it too. And you can see the process going on right there. It takes time for the water to actually enter into the cells, but yet your brain will have that predictive power. Water is a universal solvent. Here we go again. It's going back to it again, right? Osmosis, the same process. We wonder how blood gets to it, the way calcium moves into our brain. All of it's the same. Here it is, NMDA receptors. We just talked about how in animals, in that evolutionary switch between vertebrate and invertebrate, we increase this thing. You can actually see what happens. In an AMPA neurological receptor, you can only get but so much. But with this enlarged NMDA added on to that, you can see how much more your reaction time begins to change. So yes, this is all about evolution. We can't escape that.
3 minutes, Marcus.
No. Okay, let me skip down to here. Let's get down to conflagellate. Awesome creature right here. Conflagellates right here. It's a single cell organism that actually switches from being single cell to multi-cell. What they found out is part of the phalangium, and they communicate is the same way that your brain communicates. It's the same process with electrical currents. You can actually see it move around right here. You can see what it does. It's not a new process. Neurons firing and communicating with one another, cells in the body. It is not new. It's been around for quite some time. This is more about the neurosecondary vesicles, highly specialized trafficking that stores neurotransmitters and release it at a presynaptic nerve ending, and therefore important to animal cell-to-cell communication. What are we talking about? Surprisingly, we found that the vascular membrane associated with soluble in, I can't even pronounce that word, sensitive factors, attached protein receptors, the protein synaptobrevian is localized in the vessel-rich apical and the basal pole in the conflagellate. In other words, dang, it's the same thing. Oh, here it is. The aphexy. We know what this is if you've ever been on our brain show, right? Simply distant cousin, brain evolution. We see what happens. During this period of time, brains evolve so people can go on. You can see it right there, the rival greatest senses, the most critical question, 7.5 lessons. Body budget and predicting, we can't beat it. The best way you can get to think through is what? Predictability. Predictability gives you the greatest way to go. We already know this. How emotions are made, predictions. You can do it, but it's not predictions like that. I want you to understand. I'm focusing on the predictions at the microscopic level of millions of neurons talking to each other. Prediction. Even Patrick Haggard's model, it's not even his, it's Chris Frisch's model that Patrick Haggard used. It still starts with a prediction. The brain is a prediction model, and if it's predicting before you're consciously aware, then how then could you have free will? Here's an example. Synchronism. When you clap your hands, you'll see something different. The time it takes for a light to reach eyes and sound is completely different. Your brain synchronizes that sound that you just heard together. This is not a question about it. This is pure physics. So if you see somebody clapping in your hands, you know that your brain is synchronizing that experience. It's creating it so that it feels like it's at the same time. Let's keep it going. Prediction model, same thing. God darn. Hey, listen, I promise y'all, I apologize. I had so much more. I thought it was 2 15-minute rounds. I apologize.
Man,
we got the discussion.
Man, can I get the two debaters on screen? I need to get the two debaters on screen. Unshare Marcus's screen, please. I just want to say to both of y'all, thank you. Y'all actually took the conversation that we have privately in the Discord and turned it up a notch, both of you. Marcus, great round. Logic, you had a great round. Marcus, I like how you put Hubert Harrison in there. I like how you said that depending on your perspective piece, that's something that the layman can understand. The QR codes, Marcus, brilliant, very brilliant. The crossover to chimpanzees in the animal world, that transition, the synaptic self, and your examples are very sharp. They're very clear, so I appreciate that. You both have done a great job. We're moving into the discourse aspect of the debate, but we're going to take a slight break. While we're doing that, if y'all both could take some of your sources and put them in the back chat, because of the time constraints, I know you guys are reading kind of fast. but because of this is an intelligent conversation, not a debate necessarily, I want to share with the chat some of the sources that you guys are reading from. We're gonna take a slight break. Play DQ's Hot Sauce.
Before we go into that,
Go
about
ahead.
the sources, though, we'll take care of that. I don't want them to be bogged down with trying to do that. So we'll try to supply the audience with their sources. And if we don't get them all done tonight, we do have them. We will definitely have those sources available for critique on Sunday night. Okay? Fair enough. Definitely. I want them to just, you know, stay in the frame of the debate and concentrate on that.
No problem. No problem at all.
Before we play a hot sauce, also, I want to share my screen. I want you all to be aware that we will be having a speaker coming to Community of Skeptics. Please join us on Tuesday at 7 p.m. We got a geneticist, yes, Ms. Gina Page, coming to the Community of Skeptics. So y'all need to be in the house. We also have another expert, because that's what PK and the Community of Skeptics is about. We about source up or shut up, and we bring the experts, something that hardly anybody in this community do. So I don't want to hear that mess, bro. But I ain't gonna tell you who the next one's gonna be. I'm gonna save it.
Yeah, they're gonna be surprised when they see it, though.
Yeah, buddy, I'm saving it, but I'm just letting you know we on y'all backs with it.
Yes,
we on y'all backs.
But we wanted to get the two brothers a little breather real quick to catch up.
Yeah, buddy.
Breath real quick. They've been spitting that hot fire.
Hot.
Channel, man. Shout to the chat, man. Y'all been rocking with us all night, man. We just gonna keep it going. Shout to UDQ, man. We gonna go ahead and, you know what I mean, get this hot sauce in real quick, brother, man. Make sure I don't do the instrumental this time.
Yeah. You got the right one. Do you need help? You need me to do it?
Yeah, you go ahead and do that one.
No. Don't do the instrument. I got you, fam. Yeah, buddy, right here. Let go.
Hey, man, make sure y'all hit that like button, man. Share the show with one of your friends, man. And
This debate is hot sauce. Hey.
DQ, baby. LAE on the track. About to have some fun with this one. Check. Back to catch wreck. No respect for those who break their neck to keep their hoes in check. Be sure to check the box off how I'm knocking their socks off. Unique flavor, stay in the bag like hot sauce. Let me get mine off.
Go ahead,
these
Marcus.
niggas is tripping, they signed off. I'm becoming a one-of-a-kind boss. Think the kush is for Germany, the way the man cough. Hilarious with the flow, I'm fucking the word off. These niggas claim they hard, they really appear soft and peeled off. Mad job when I aim when the spears toss. Newbie ass rappers is really my kids now. I'm just Aubrey on the gram, cropping these kids out. Catch wreck. No respect for those who break their neck to keep their hoes in check. Be sure to check the box off how I'm knocking their socks off. Unique flavor, stay in the bag like hot sauce. Better call a timeout. A fool nigga, you a fool nigga. Think you can fuck with this rap style. I do this shit for fun, I'm really the class clown. Tap dancing on top of niggas' head till they tap out. Really the cash cow, submission hole, yeah you pigeonhole. Realizing your dice done crapped out. Put yourself in the box, you really just assed out. Cause your boy about to pop and I'm shutting that ass down. Cream of the crop, it really get passed round. Cause I'm cooler than the cooler of cools in Hicktown. Niggas claim they rappers, they really just sit down. Only rap for Facebook, I'm reporting that shit now. Compilation of music, sending the zip file to the nearest A&R. Big fish in a big town. Musically inclined, I'm never gonna slip down. Cause the shit is going up as soon as it's mixed down. Catch wreck. No respect for those who break their neck to keep their hoes in check. Be sure to check the box off how I'm knocking their socks off. Unique flavor, stay in the bag like hot sauce. DQ.
Hey, that's so fire. Like this
DQ,
debate.
baby. DQ,
Fire.
baby.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take, like I said, we took a little break. Make sure we supported the each of these brothers' Cash App. Give you guys a chance to have a quick conversation. I just want to say to both of y'all once again, and I know I said it before, it's something about the man in the arena. You know, a lot of people can talk, have conversations in a voice chat, A lot of people can talk, have conversations, you know, just random conversations, talking trash to each other. But the fact that you guys strapped up your intellectual hardware and got it together and debated in front of a crowd, that says a lot about both of you, no matter how the outcome turns out. So we've gone over the opening statements.
First of all, let me interject. So for the audience, for the panel, and for clarity, there's a rule that all debaters, participants have to be cammed up. Mark is just uncammed because he has to take care of something that has to deal with his health and medical. I just wanted to say that for transparency, okay? I'm out.
Okay. So we've covered the opening statements. We've covered the presentations. So now we're going to do an interesting piece that is kind of something I've never seen, but I kind of like it. You guys are going to have the opportunity to do a discourse, but it's a moderated discourse. You will have the opportunity to have questions back and forth with each other, but right now you're just having a conversation with each other. If you want to shape your questions for the next round, that's no problem. But right now you're just having a discourse, just a conversation. So I'm going to start off. We went Logic. I believe you started first, right? To start the whole thing off with opening statements. So I'm just going to back out of the conversation. Listen, if I cut in, stop talking. Stop right there, or just land your plane really quickly, and then we'll go into the next piece. So Marcus, I'm going to give you the opportunity to start off the discourse, and you have 15 minutes. So you ready? Go ahead. You're muted, Marcus and Logic.
Let me ask you: is volition, and voluntary action solely a human capability? And if it isn't solely a human capability, do the same freedoms that we apply to humans apply to those?
This isn't the. I just want to be clear before you answer, Logic. This isn't the question round.
Oh,
Are you shaping your? Your guys are just talking to each other. So statements. You know, just
Okay.
have a conversation. It's just a conversational round.
This is considered a mini debate.
Yeah, just a mini debate where you both can talk to each other while you're on the screen. So go ahead, make a statement, a thesis of some kind.
Okay, so I'm trying to capture what we're saying. So Logic. I wouldn't assume that. Okay, let me say it this way. I know that y'all hear me say humans are not exceptional, right? That doesn't mean that they're not unique. So I'm not saying that there aren't capabilities to humans, but those capabilities are still shaped through the basic evolutionary processes. You get what I'm saying? So can we share our screens or no?
No, just talking right now. Just talking.
Okay. So there was a study done. I didn't get a chance to get to it.
Okay.
That compared chimpanzees and Neanderthals with humans. Homo sapiens, they found some differences, right? They found that some of the mutated differences that they see in there has to do with what we were talking about, human agency, right? Okay. So that's the parietal lobe, the frontal cortex, and the prefrontal cortex. I'm gonna send you that source, Logic. And self-awareness. So we know that that's a process that's in there, but does that necessitate freedom? That would be my question.
Logic, go ahead and get in there. And remember, this is not one of your 3 questions, but it's to move the conversation forward. So go ahead, Logic, get in there.
Right. So does it necessitate freedom? I like how you framed the question. But I'd say, just like in my premise, I'd say freedom from what, right? So I think that I'd like to redirect or get more specific about what you're trying to talk about in terms of how would that exclude human abilities from having the ability to make what science would call top-down decisions and be able to deliberate before a person acts? Does it exclude it?
It wouldn't exclude it, but that wouldn't be a new process. See, when you look at voluntary actions, right, or goal-oriented actions, they're not saying animals can't do it. The argument is that because of our expanded complexity, we do it more so than they do. But when a lion is thirsty, that lion still go get water.
Uh-huh.
So from your example, you said, I'm thirsty, I drink a cup of water. Is it I doing it? Well, if a lion's thirsty and he goes to the river and drink, is it not him doing it? And do we call that free will? Or do we call that freedom?
So I mean that's where the conversation gets tricky, right? So what do I need it to be free from, right? So again, I'm trying to redirect what you're trying to say into how it applies to a social construct that we probably know today as responsible, right? Like what would differentiate my ability to either have a sip of water now or to have a sip of water later, right? Which is I'm going to postpone or use my inhibitory control over these actions versus what a lion who potentially has less inhibitory control, executive functions. See, I'm trying to narrow it down to basically what science would call our abilities, right? So when you try to relate what our cognitive abilities are to animals, you simply just have a separation there. And that's not me saying it. That's what science is going to be able to tell you. They're going to say that we do have this ability to make long-range decisions and be able to use abstract futures to be able to weigh the options on whether we get this drink of water now or whether we drink this drink of water later. So I wouldn't
land your planes and get Marcus in there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I answered. I can let it go right there.
Okay, go ahead, Marcus.
I think we have to deal with that. I wish I could actually share my screen, but I'm going to explain what we're talking about, right? It's called an illusion. This is from Lisa Barrett, How Emotions Are Made. And I want to, we're not doing, for the Sunday show, we're not doing this book. We're doing,
to be clear, what's called an illusion?
I'm going to tell you. Well, I'll read it from the beginning. Your brains also use prediction to initiate your body's movement, like reaching out an arm to pick up an apple or dashing away from a snake. So even in those things, and we look at Patrick Haggard's work, he has a model that they go by, and Chris Frisch is actually one of the originators of that model. And if you look at his work, he explains about the predictive nature of that work. So when you talk about feelings of agency, it's based off of my reactions to the environmental world that my body is causing the differences in. So when I go there and lift up a light and I see light, before I went to take that first step, my brain predicted that, and its anticipation of the light is what we're talking about when people feel agency. And so these predictions occur before you have any consciousness awareness. But that doesn't mean that consciousness doesn't actually play a role. I got a source for that too. Neuroscience and psychologists call this phenomenon the illusion of free will. Now, here's the thing. The word illusion is a bit of a misnomer. Your brain isn't actually acting behind your back. You are your brain and the whole cascade of events that cause your brain, caused by your brain's predictive power. It's called illusion because the movements feel like two-step process, right? So you feel as though you are performing things in a step-way process, this and then this, right? When in fact your brain issues a motor predictions to move your body well before you become aware of it. And Sam Harris, that was Lisa Barrett, one of the sources I provided. Sam Harris says it is not that free will is the illusion. Our experiences are not merely delivering a distorted view of reality.
We'll let logic get in after that.
Okay, rather we are mistaken about our experiences. So we are mistaken in interpreting our experiences, but that's also part of the evolutionary process. And you can read Robert Triver's book on the deception of your brain. That explains that.
Go ahead, Logic.
I think what you're describing is a hypothesis where science says that consciousness is a retrospective, subjective experience where that's not what you're saying?
No,
keep talking.
I'm sorry.
I want to be clear about what he's actually talking about.
Let me give a point of clarification. Just let me be clear on this thing. The retrospection is the other model that goes against Haggard. But Lisa Barrett and Sam Harris are with Haggard on that model. So we're not talking about retrospective, we're talking about prediction. That's slightly different.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't understand where the prediction actually excludes my ability to deliberate, right? It absolutely doesn't exclude any of my prior deliberations from my actions, which is what I feel like is really the important part of the conversation, because once you include my prior deliberations, well, now you have to include some of my internal goals that I have in mind, and however you want to say I came up with them, those are my internal goals, right? So you have a combination, just as I was reading before in the article, you have a combination of these external factors and my internal motivations causing me to make decisions, and you don't have a single or even a combination of simply external factors determining my actions from there. I mean, that's what it sounds like that you're actually saying. I hope we can kind of extend that part for like a little 5 minutes. It's just a complicated conversation that we both want to get some clarity on. I know we got some time constraints, but to answer your question,
just keep going. I'll ask.
To answer your question, you have not successfully removed my participation in any of these decisions.
That it's not about my like I said, you are your brain. The issue is the framework of what we're talking about. So let me say it this way. You say deliberation, right? When a lioness goes out in a thing to hunt, is it all random external factors? Are they not having some deliberation in it? When we look at the evolution of behavior, we try to take it outside of, right, the evolutionary process. Right? And I'm saying that when you add these animals, I gave an example that when they actually do the cross comparisons, they're using animal models. So if you look at those animal models, you start to see the development of the deliberation. But we don't say that those organisms have free will.
Okay.
And so this is
Y'all
where
have an extra 5 minutes, so go ahead.
Okay.
About 8 minutes total.
Okay, so this is where the complication comes in, because what the argument is from one side is that humans have free will, right? And that is an exception to anything else. But then when you go into what they're describing as this freedom, you find it in the animal kingdom. And so now we have a problem, because if you say that it's about our deliberation, right? And then you look at animals hunt, where's the difference? We may have it in a wider variety. We may use it in a.
So are you then asking me the question from the premise of animals have the same level of cognitive control that humans do?
No, of course not. But my point is not that if they have the same level, that's just an evolutionary process that developed in us. Like I said, it's not even a question of they actually Y'all sure I can't share? Let me
I vote for him to be able to share. I actually want to hear what you're saying. Because what I'm saying is exactly what I just said, right? I just mentioned cognitive control, which would not put my ability to make decisions outside of evolution. It would actually include my ability to make decisions at the forefront of evolution, right? It would actually then put the human brain at the prefrontal cortex as being probably one of the most advanced levels of evolution that I mean they kind of that's out there, right? Like it absolutely does not exclude the uniqueness of human cognitive control. You kind of haven't taken that away from me yet, right? So when you try to compare human cognitive control, human inhibition to control, or human attention concentration, or how I worded it earlier, I can't remember it, but you haven't removed that from evolution. You haven't said that what I'm trying to say is outside of natural processes, but it's also a part of decision making. So go ahead, share your screen. I'm interested to see it.
Okay, so no,
go ahead. I asked the judges; they said you could. Go ahead.
Okay, so what I'm saying is that what we're talking is from two different perspectives, right? You are looking at it from a social aspect of it, as well as a human exceptionalism, right? And what I'm saying is that the body plan, the genes that mutated to give humans and animals such a diverse body plan, that same mechanism does it with animal brains, right? And so, yes, we have a unique brain, but the fundamental practices that brought about that brain is not different. And the point is that we're trying to make it something that it may not be. But inside of that, even if you say that's true, that doesn't talk away about determinism, because this is the part that we exclude from. During evolution, the cerebral cortex advances by increasing the surface and the introduction of new cytoractic, I can't do it, areas among which the prefrontal cortex is considered to be the substrate of the highest cognitive function. So yes, that's true, right? Although neurons in the prefrontal cortex are generated before birth, the differentiation of his neurons and development of synaptic connections in human extend to the third decade of life. So from the time that before you're born, right, that prefrontal cortex is already in an evolutionary chain of events. Where do you get some added variabilities to? Same thing as anything else, staticism, right? That there's always this variability into it, right? But here is the thing, right? Neurons assume their final position. They begin to differentiate further and form synaptic connections. Now, we talked about the Changa flag, right? Part of that is in that, right? Part of those genes that cause this is also in that. The prefrontal cortex, seat of the higher cognitive function, continues to develop into the adulthood. It is among the latest brain regions to fully mature. The primary sensory cortex, as well as the primary motor cortex, matures earlier. However, the dendritic trees and the density of the spines within the subdomains of the prefrontal cortex seem to be more complex. So that primary sensory sensory cortex is the exact thing that Patrick Haggard is using, but its development, the individual had no control over. And then when you bring in social reality that helps develop and function it, there's still none. So yes, when that completion is done, it may look like one thing, but what we're saying is it's still part of the evolutionary process.
I totally agree. It's a part of the evolutionary process. So look, so to simplify all of what you're saying, right? Tell me, because I just agree with what you said, that this is part of the evolutionary process. Tell me what advantages are gained from a baby to an adult in the development of the prefrontal cortex. What is actually developing from a baby to an adult in cognitive control if it's not more control of your cognitive functions?
It is the environmental influences that you have. So culture plays a role in your development, right? And we have examples of that. As a baby, you are learning how to survive in a world in the culture you're in. And so you develop neuroplasticity. And so your culture and social reality start to shape your brain, right? And if you look at one of the Romanian orphanage studies, you'll see what happens when that falls apart. They lose. Now listen to this. This is a very important study. Are you aware of the Romanian orphanage study?
What do they lose?
Okay, so this is what happened during a Romanian orphanage catastrophe. It was a catastrophe. Communist government came into control, and they passed bills and laws that forced women to have a lot of children, and they couldn't take care of them, so they went to orphanages. Inside of those orphanages, they were treated bad. And so because of their treatment, their prefrontal cortex did not develop correctly. And so in that behavior, they had cognitive problems. So what they learned from that is that the reason why our maturation period takes long is because we have complex social institutions. And so it takes longer for the brain to develop to be viable so you can pass on your genes, right?
Okay, look.
And so
we don't have a whole lot of time, right? So let's try to answer the question is in terms of inhibitory control, right?
1 minute, Logic. You'll be finished in 1 minute.
That's right. So a part of the development of the prefrontal cortex, a part of the development of executive functions and cognitive control is inhibitory control. Are you saying that this inhibitory control is no different from the time of a baby to an adult? Because that's why I'm asking you what is actually developing.
Yes, that is actually what makes you so
inhibitory control of what?
30 seconds.
Huh? It's not. It is the executive computation ability of the prefrontal cortex in the brain of humans, but you don't control that part of the brain. In other words, it is your brain doing everything. You're just a passenger driver. And like I showed you,
inhibitory control of what?
Of taxic behavior, of interpretation and perception. So there's a study out right now.
External stimuli.
Time.
Not just internal stimuli, because it itself is internal stimuli.
Time. Respect the time limits, fellas. Respect the time limits, because you got chances to do questions now. That discourse gave me a good eye into the level. You brothers are really raising the bar for intellectual conversation on YouTube. I want to tell you, I really appreciate it. We're gonna go right into the question round. Logic, I'm gonna give you the opportunity. By the way, I just noticed your shirt. I love that shirt. We're gonna give you the opportunity. You're each gonna get 3 questions each. Now, somebody, one of the judges, fill me in. How much time do they get to answer the questions, Brendan?
I don't think we necessarily defined an answer time period. You know, in terms of that, I think whatever's sufficient, and then you as the judge do your determination.
Okay, all right. Yep. So we'll give Logic a chance to. And also, I appreciate you for judging, Brendan. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, and you say you're doing a great job, and both debaters are phenomenal. Right, I'm taking notes. This is great.
All right, though. All right, so Logic, you're each gonna get 3 questions. All I ask is, even though it's not timed, just understand, we still have 3 questions coming from the judges and then close statements of 5 sources each. So I won't get in the middle of this. The only thing I ask is that you ask your question, get out the way. Ask one question, get out the way, let them answer. So Logic, ask your first question to Chilembwe.
Chilembwe. So my first question is, why does even your slides include the word influence and not determined?
Because there are multiple influences, and influence has a specific meaning. And so they use it in context of what they're talking about. If you were to, am I allowed to share my screen in this or no?
Let him share his screen.
1 second, I'm not sure because I don't think we were even supposed to do it during the discourse. So, Brendan, what do they say about that?
I'll say yes if you want to share your screen during the rebuttal, yes, or question Q&A, absolutely.
Okay, go ahead. Just keep your answer somewhat brief because it's a total of 6 questions, Marcus. Oh wait, no. Actually, we've been overruled. There are no. You cannot share your screen during the questions. So just answer it to the best of your ability. Marcus, you got to unmute.
I gave an example of what it means when you say influence, and gave the definition of influence during the debate. I may have spoken real fast. So the influence is to affect or change how someone or something develops, behaves, or thinks. So in Alfred Mealy's book, Free Will, Why Science Haven't Disproved Free Will, he also uses the idea of influence, but it changes when you actually read out what the definition of influence is. So it says, and a lot more is known about factors that influence human behavior that was known even a few decades ago. So if we put the definition of influence in there, a lot more is known now about the factors that affect or change how someone or something develops, behaves, or thinks. And so when you put the full definition there, you can see what they're saying. So I don't see anything wrong with that. Determinism is a philosophical word.
Your turn to ask a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Marcus. Ask your question.
So, excuse me. Are you against? No, let me not. I don't want to ask that question. That's a little too much.
Yes.
Let me ask this question this way. What would be wrong if determinism and predetermination is actually true?
Determination is actually true, then it would bring us full circle right back into some of the good that people do, right? And I used an example earlier of Martin Luther King. You would, if all of his actions were predetermined, would he deserve the praise that we give him today, right? If he had no choice in any of his actions, could you say that he was risking anything by doing any of his actions, right? Or let's put the, I mean, I feel like you threw me an alley-oop right here. And real talk, I mean, I'm in the air doing a 360. I'm ready to dunk it anyway. But at the same time, you know, what does that mean towards you and your sentiments as a Pan-African, right? Like the fact that we are here, representing a small sector of the Black community, and we do hold some sentiments against racism and some of the wrongs that we've been done in society that a predetermined notion would say are subjective. Would I now have to redefine some of my motivations for wanting to improve the Black community, would I now have to revise some of my appropriate sentiments towards some of the wrongs that we've been done here in America? To me, that's a question I don't even really want to ask myself. I feel like the way that I feel is completely appropriate based on the information I have. I feel like to take on a thesis, a philosophical position so diametrically opposed to actually what I want to accomplish in real life does not seem very appropriate.
Okay, so that's what is that? That's one question apiece, correct? You're on mute, Marcus.
That one a question posed to me. Logic.
No, that was me
No,
answering.
you asked Logic.
Oh, okay.
You asked
All right.
Logic a question. So that's 1 and 1. So now I'm gonna reverse it a little bit. Logic, go ahead and ask Marcus a question.
So, question I want to ask you. So
and this is your second question. This is your
right.
second question.
Since you are a hard determinist and you understand the implications of it, and some of the implications are certainly slanted towards responsibility and the nature of those type of things. Do you have an obligation to other people in your environment?
So I put up a slide. I'm always going to go try my best to go back to my sources. So I put up a slide about two different responsibilities: a moral responsibility and a causal responsibility. So if you look at the trail that we're talking about, right? First, let me clarify social reality, right? Social reality is as much real, right, to human beings as objective reality, in a sense that social reality can affect and influence biology. And because of that, then when you hold these questions about what do we do about social realities, we will have things like conversations about responsibility. You'll have causal responsibility. Those things aren't excluded. But when you talk about objective, then that's something different. So let me give you an example. I'm going to give you two examples so everybody can be clear about what I'm saying. One example is the Earth is spinning, right? And because of that Earth's rotation, right, we start to face away or towards the sun, right? To us, we still say sunset and sunrise as if the sun is the one moving. We clearly understand, we know objectively it's the Earth that's moving. So it could be clear that objectively we do not have free will. But socially, we may imply certain things are required so that we can continue to reproduce, right? And the key to that is the next part of the social reality. Racism is part of that. And so if you wanted to address that type thing, we would look at it from, okay, these are the things that affect people that are in this position. Let's change those things so that the causality of it can change as well. And that is still based upon survival of the fittest. It's about we evolved as social creatures, so we want our society to produce better social creatures.
Okay. Marcus, it's your opportunity. We're 4 questions in. Remember, this isn't your last question, Marcus, but after this, you'll each have one last question to ask. Marcus, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Have you ever heard of the layered networks of neurons, including what they call the association network of neurons, and how that creates abstract thought and perception?
Oh, I could have stopped you like 7 words ago. I ain't never heard of that before.
Oh, so that, okay. that was my question. My next question will lead into the effects of that.
Okay, no problem. Go ahead and ask your last question, Logic.
No, I thought that was, I thought he
No,
was
that
making
was
a
his.
two-
He
a
was
two-part
clear. That was
question.
his. No, he was clear. That was his question. His last question will answer. Will finish that question. So now you have
I'm
the
actually-
opportunity to ask your last question.
I'm actually very curious of, and I feel like it's kind of unfair to you, but I have to ask you of knowing the implications, and I feel like you know them better than anybody else that I've had this conversation with. Knowing the implications of what it would mean towards your actual sentiments that you hold as a black man in America, towards racism, towards redlining, towards slavery, towards all these heinous things that have been done to us, and knowing that determinism suggests that these things are not morally wrong, why would it be a philosophical and not a scientific or an empirical stance that you're taking? Why would that be something that is even interesting to you?
So you made a statement that is not accurate. I'm going to give you a source about why determinism is effective in science. It has to do with the scientific method, and it has to do with methodological philosophy versus the other way. So matter of fact, no, I don't want to do that. I want to give you the actual terms. I didn't get a chance. Y'all know the story. I don't want to keep repeating myself. Dang it.
Now wait, for clarification, determinism does simply imply that slavery wasn't quote unquote morally wrong, right? It does do that, doesn't it?
They say so. It don't have to be morally. It could always be socially wrong.
But it implies that quote unquote nothing was wrong about it, right? It was just a part of human interactions.
No,
it doesn't.
No.
So when they're making all of these comments about responsibility, slavery is some kind of way excluded.
No. You're misunderstanding. You're putting moral responsibility versus causal responsibility. They're not the same thing. I just said that. So you can hold somebody causally responsible because the effects have damaged people without adding the moral obligations that go with it. And you can look
when
at
you
that,
read about it, it absolutely
Hold
says
on, logic.
Right?
Let him answer his question. Let him answer your question.
Right. They listen. So when you hear determinism say you're not morally responsible, that does not exclude causal responsibility. They're two separate things. In order to be morally responsible, it must be causally responsible. But you don't have to be causally responsible. It doesn't go both ways. That's two separate things. And so it's called methodological naturalism. It's the philosophical assumption that underlines the scientific method. That's what it is, and it's determinism. I mean, that's actually what it is. So it's part of the scientific method, and it means that there's a cause and that you can determine through the methodological processes of science. So yes, determinism is a philosophical word at times, but it's definitely part of the scientific method. And I'll give you that. That's called Deceptive Mind, a scientific guide to critical thinking. And so again, as a hard determinist, right, I do not look at it as morally responsible, but I address it as a causal responsibility. And we talked about this similarly during the weigh-in. And when I said that you could hold a hurricane responsible. If a hurricane hits somebody and people die, we say they died because of the hurricane. So that's causal responsibility. That's different. That's a different thing. And so you can look up causal responsibility versus moral responsibility. But more so, slavery was a human endeavor. And I don't take anybody out of humanity, including African Americans. So that's just where I'm at with it. I I won't go as far to say what Khalid Muhammad said in one of his statements, but I will say that anybody is capable of doing anything humans do.
Okay. All right, Marcus. I hope that answered your question, Logic. Marcus, go ahead and ask your last question, and then we're going to move on to the judges. So go ahead and ask Logic your last question, Marcus.
Okay. Here's my last question, Logic. Here's my last question. After this discussion, are you going to continue to study the subject?
I think that I honestly feel like my task is completed, man. I gotta be honest with you. I'm still interested in the subject, but the subject has it allowed me to take a deep enough dive to where once I got close enough to see the bottom, right, that's when my eyes got that's when my vision got real clear as far as what we're discussing, right? And I want to be clear about it. So like, I honestly feel like we're having a discussion about who turned the lights on. Was it me? Was it my brain? Was it my grandma? Was it the Big Bang? And I turned the lights on. Like the practical implications of it aren't quite as motivating as the social implications of it once we kind of got past the reparations conversation, once we got past the slavery conversation, and the intellectual discourse was fun. And I still have a lot of information that, just like you, that I haven't really shared. I honestly feel like determinism is, for me, right, man, I don't know what appropriate words I can use, but when I think, what comes to my mind when I think of determinism, I think it gets me too close to the line that I'm not comfortable with. And by it not being science, I don't want to be in a place where I am even considering a concept that says that I don't hold the people morally responsible for slavery not responsible for their actions. And it like that kind of pushes me away from it, right? So it gave me enough motivation, it gave me enough energy to start reading and start trying to figure out how I can be able to argue against it. But for my reality, the practical use of it isn't I don't really enjoy that part of it, right? Again, I feel like I'm asking you who turned the lights on. And it's me. When my arm goes up in the air, a problem arises. What's left over from the fact that I raised my arm, and it's me. Like, that's a simple answer. Right. So, and I also understand, thanks to you mostly, right? I also understand the pitfalls of the definitions, and for a fact that at least I feel like I did a really good job of preventing my argument from being dualistic in any aspect, right? It was completely natural. I didn't have to go into any sort of a God did it. I didn't have to say anything like that. And so for me, the conversation wouldn't be about trying to prove is will free or if we have will at all. I'm more so concerned about what can this conversation give me that I could now take to traffic court or take to criminal court and now alleviate myself from blame or from responsibility. And I can't use it like that.
Okay.
So for me, it's I'm open to having the conversation. I also have a 500-page book that I'm kind of interested in reading, but I think once I get that, and because that book's more about evolution's more interesting than trying to define if my will is free, and then free from what? Is it free from biology? Right? Is it free enough for me to be held responsible? I mean, I feel like it's daft.
So
I have become daft from reading the philosophers.
So I understand that sentiment, right? So we'll continue it on some other things, but there's something you did stay away from throughout all our conversations that we've had in the Discord and over on there. I definitely
30 seconds, Marcus. 30 seconds.
Okay, bro. Okay. You definitely stayed away from dualism and the definition pitfalls that you can easily fall to. I would suggest that you read the Your Deceptive Mind, a Science Guide to Critical Thinking. I'm gonna send you the free PDF of it. It's gonna talk about some of the methodologies that we're discussing now. And then there's an Audible book that is it's similar to like Neurology 101 that you can listen to, and it has tests after each chapter on a PDF form that you can take, and then inside of that, there at the end, there's another test. Yeah, and I think that'll it definitely deals with evolution in that concept, both of them, and I think that'll definitely get us where we need to be, and we can continue some conversations about the evolution of the brain.
Okay, so we're moving forward to the questions from the panel. Listen, I've had this conversation with y'all in the Discord for the past 3 months. I know how it can get, and it leads to more stuff, but we can still talk privately. But now we got to get to the questions from the panel. Welcome, God Killer, Serious B, Mac Rob. I just noticed you got on the Death of Expertise shirt. That's fly. Yep. So we're gonna start off with Mac Rob. Ask your questions. Direct your questions to who it is. The person can answer their question, or you can ask it to both debaters. But if you direct it to Marcus, I am going to give Logic a little bit of time to weigh in if you haven't asked him the question. So, Mac Rob, ask your question and state who the question is going to.
All right, check. Good evening to the panel. Good evening to the chat. Good evening to these two titans.
Good evening, brother.
Can y'all hear me?
What up?
Yeah.
Good evening, Mac.
Good evening, man.
Okay. Check,
He's,
man.
he's wrong.
I don't want to drag it out, but I have to get that out. As one who is not a fan of philosophy at all, y'all have definitely piqued my interest in the subject. So with that said, Brass, how many questions am I asking total?
You're asking one question. You're just one question, but you could ask it to both of them or one individual, and I'll give the other a chance to weigh in.
Absolutely. So having said that, my question is going to be...
Sorry, it's one question to each debater from each judge.
Okay, so 6 questions total.
Correct.
Okay, all right. So then, Mac Rob, you can ask one question to each.
All right. So let's start with you, Mr. Marcus. My first question will be, what is from your research and studies and the sources that you utilize, what is your greatest evidence for your position?
My greatest evidence is actually evolution, right? And the steps and processes that led to the brain we have today. And that in that you see the behaviors that we tend to think are solely based on complex organisms you find in single cell organisms and early evolutionary animals that you wouldn't expect to see. So one of those would be like the Chifangavle. I can never pronounce that dang word, but I used it in there. It's the single cell organism that goes from single cell to multi-cell and then uses a similar process as the neurotransmitters you use in your brain. And so it's those type of things that they're just now starting to find out. It's less than 15 years ago they came across this freshwater organism. It's things like that. It's things like the slug that they found had the same or similar, matter of fact, they actually found the same genes that you find in your brain now, operating in similar situations. It's the sea creature that looks like the worm from Tremors, that they were surprised to find out has a similar dopamine reward network that gives him that encourages his movement and voluntary action. It's the fish that they found out flashes its tail for other fish, for a different type of fish that come along and hunt with him. It is those things that are pushing the edge and saying, we thought that these behaviors were solely complex for complex organisms, but in reality, we see the markings and makings of them well before, way earlier than we thought we should.
Okay. Does that conclude your response?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Mac Rob. Ask your question to Logic.
All right. So, Mr. Logic, again, great debate, great information. My question to you is, in today's debate, based on what your opponent showed, what question do you feel like went unanswered in this debate for yourself? What question do you feel like he did not answer?
Good question.
My biggest question would be, why would my actions need to be how did I word it here? Why would my actions need to be independent of all these influences for my actions to be deemed as, or for me to be deemed as accountable for my actions? So what I understand is that you have laid out a lot of factors that go into decision making, but you have not demonstrated some sort of a formula or some sort of a, I'm not even sure of the word of how all of these factors come together and determine my actions. Because based on the definition, my actions are determined. My actions are inevitable, and there's only one outcome. So you have not successfully demonstrated on what prevents me from having any options, right? Like, so if I were to have some sort of options right now based on these influences, well, what would have prevented me from having options to make a choice the last time I needed to make a choice? To me, that's still an unanswered question that would even define what he's saying as deterministic, rather than him just laying out a bunch of influences that play a role in my decision. They don't determine my decision.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your response.
Okay, I appreciate your participation, Mac Rob. I'm going to go over to Sirius B. You have a question for each debater. Go ahead when you're ready.
I tell you, man, you guys are really putting on a clinic tonight, right? Regarding the determinism versus compatibilism. Is free will a thing for biological organisms? So before I even ask my question, I just wanted to put in just one interesting, a factoid, right? In terms of how long this conversation has been going on in the Discord. And we talked about this in our back chat a little bit. And the first mention of the free will conversation as it relates to neurological science, right? This was proposed by Posterious Thought back on September 9th, 2022. So this particular conversation has been going on 1 year, 4 months, and 17 days till tonight, right? So again, right, that goes to the whole idea, right, in terms of how long this particular conversation has been happening. And the first responder was Paragon 0379. And in the way he always responds was either with a source or a video. And he responded with a video on YouTube talking about consciousness and free will. But I'll jump into my first question and I'll direct this to Marcus. Right? You sort of describe yourself as a hard determinism, right? And I actually went through all the the source material, the premise information that you guys actually posted, and that it was, I think this was really good for the judges. And within your premise, right, you called out something that I really do understand that you're a hard determinist. You said that compatibilism is subjective and based on conjecture. So essentially what you're saying that the whole idea of compatibilism is a fallacious argument on the philosophical front. Can you sort of describe that and elaborate on that hard stance about the logically flawed stance of compatibilism?
Well, they actually say it themselves, right? They actually openly tell you this is they say that the reason why we gotta say we have some type of freedom is because of the social implications of it. Like they're not saying they never said, okay, absolutely, we have a freedom or free will. What they say is, let's change the definition so that we can squeeze in moral responsibility. But we're talking about what is objectively real. Is it plausible? Maybe. But what is the probability, knowing what we know about evolution, knowing what we know about the mechanisms that the body and brain uses, right? How about this? We always talking about eternal, the internal reflections of behavior, goal directed. What do we answer to that about the bacteria in your gut that sends messages to your brain? Is that also part of the eternal? Is that also part of that mechanism, knowing that it is an organism that is not technically you? So these are the things that they have the answer for. But in all reality, the truth of the matter is they have no problem telling you we changing the definition of free will so that we can hold on to moral responsibility and reward. And Logic said it himself when I asked him a question. He had no problem saying about Dr. King. So that is the function of what they're arguing about. But the problem is that, guess what? We're talking about the objective reality of the brain and how it evolved. That's what determinism they're talking about. And it's very specific. Like they tell you, based on this information, we no longer think it's plausible for free will or freedom to exist. That's where their stance is. Thank you.
Okay. Good answer. Logic. So I point the guns over to you. Along the same sort of frame or the same vein of the question that I have. And the question I have is towards the premise that you put forth to the judges, right, early on in the debate. And when you talked about the whole idea about humans and biological organisms having enough control, right, enough volition to be held responsible for their actions. Can you sort of describe, all right, what you were sort of thinking in the whole idea of enough control? Is that something that we can quantitatively measure, right? Is that something that you have a source for that you can kind of elaborate on, right? Give us your idea of what you mean when you say that we have enough control.
So I think that the best information that I ran into that allows me to really encapsulate what I mean by enough control, right? So whereas I would agree with Marcus that says that we have a lot of biological functions that we're not in control of, right? When I look at the science and how they are describing control, they are very tentative to describe how these processes work in the brain specifically, right? But what they absolutely can measure is how and when these specific circumstances where people lose control, right? So they say that you lose control when you have damage or when you have a disease, when you have a psychosis such as schizophrenia, or when you have something such as Parkinson's disease, where they can then go on to measure how well you're able to rationally make decisions, or how well you're able to organize goal related actions, and actually, like, I think one of them that's really easy to just understand, like a person with Parkinson's disease would have a hard time like if you gave them a list of groceries and just sent them to the store, right? They would go into the store and wander around and wouldn't be able to focus on exactly what it is that they went into the store for. Just as an example of a person losing cognitive control, or a person that possibly has a strong drug addiction. You could say that this person has lost the control of inhibition. They are no longer able to function in a healthy capacity. So whereas when you're talking about brain science, it's actually and hopefully I did a really good job of saying exactly what the experts say, but it's actually a very, very, very apparently very difficult thing to measure, right? But it's a lot easier to measure people who lose it, and that's simply because of the limitations of instruments, right? But you can get somebody that's an LD person, and you can measure that they've lost some of these cognitive controls.
All right, was that answer to your satisfaction?
Yep, great answer from both debaters. Thank you.
All right, God Killer, you have the welcome to the panel. You have the opportunity to ask each of the debaters a question. By all means, proceed.
First of all, I'd like to say good job, Brass, on mediating the discussion. I think you did high-level conversations justice today. Appreciate you, bro, like the way you did it, and that's some work. And big up to Marcus and Logic, man. Y'all, proud of y'all, man. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Just the level of the conversation, the study. I can always tell when people study if they just bullshitting us. You know it. I can hear it, yo, because I hear the experts. You know, I specifically stayed out this conversation because I wanted to see people just raise up to the damn level, yo. And so I feel good to know that the Pseudo Killas is in good goddamn hands, yo. And we won't be challenged for a long time because we challenge ourselves. And this conversation represents a challenge, right? And I appreciate that. First of all, before I ask y'all questions, man, we're gonna have an expert on, and I think it's important. I want y'all to see me share my screen real quick before I get you the question, man. We're gonna have a couple experts coming through. All right, but this one right here is important. We're gonna always bring an expert through when people run their mouth and messing up information. So it's important to bring experts through and talk about it. So we coming, is my screen shared?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So we having Dr. Gina Page come through, co-founder of AfricanAncestry.com. It's going to be Tuesday, January the 30th at 7 p.m. All right. This conversation is important to have so that we understand the validity of tests. What is genes and genetics? You know, can we use it for certain things? Are we misusing it? Exactly what is it and how is it important to humanity? So, you know, it's going down, and we're going to let the experts tell us what's going on with that. So she's a co-founder of, you know, one of the largest companies as far as largest databases for African Americans and Africans, right? And I think it's important for the sisterhood to push that forward. So yeah, if y'all can support that, make sure y'all support that. Appreciate the contributions to make sure that these conversations happens with the experts, and that's what we specializing in these days, man. And Series B, where you at, Series B?
Right here.
So I'm not sure if you want to kind of tell people what you know, you always got the super duper bag of tricks right? I'm not sure if you want to tell people, you know, where we going, right?
Yeah,
with one of the experts. Go
we can
ahead.
put it out there since it's
Okay.
already sort of confirmed in terms of the conversation we're going to
No.
have.
Wait.
No.
What you mean, no, Gigi?
No.
What you mean, no, Gigi? What you
Hey,
mean, no? Why she
stop.
jumping in like that? What
All right, so in terms of you just a tidbit, just a teaser in terms of some of the conversations we're going to have moving forward. We do have a conversation with an Egyptologist out of Penn State University that we're going to interview. You know, her specialty is in you know, the ancient Egyptian state formation and government within the New Kingdom period, around 10,000 to 15,000 BCE. Again, right, she's a practicing Egyptologist, right? She's a PhD from out of the University of Chicago, and also a graduate of from Cambridge University. So she's thrilled to have a conversation with the Pseudo Killers to talk about, you know, Egypt, right? Why the field of Egyptology is important in terms of understanding, you know, in interpreting the ancient Egyptian or ancient cultures, right, or ancient history as well. You know, we're really, you know, interested in saying, okay, well, what tools, what techniques that, you know, within the science of Egyptology you guys are using, right? Really, really poignant questions in terms of understanding why that field of study is important in terms of bringing the science forward, you know, in terms of, you know, what we're doing. So stay tuned for that, right? We'll get that conversation in front of you guys. And again, right, you know, this is what we're doing, and we got to raise the bar.
Yeah. Yep, appreciate that, man. That's how we doing it, man. And we doing it at a high level. We don't care what nobody say. So my first question, right, is going to be the same question to both of y'all. But the first question is really a setup question. So all I need from you is a yes or a no, right? And then I will ask you the question that's going to make the rubber meet the road. So here's my question. Y'all should already have a good sense of what I'm going to ask you. Yes or no? How connected to this conversation is evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology? How connected is y'all conversation to those two fields of evolution? Right? Is it connected to it? That's the question. Are they connected to it? Yes or no, Marcus?
100%.
Yes. Logic, yes or no? Can't hear you.
Oh,
You said no?
no.
You said no. Okay.
No.
Okay. Surprising. So since you said 100%, the question is, if it is so connected and they do understand evolutionary biology and they do understand evolutionary psychology, Marcus, then how come they don't have these answers yet? See, Logic, you should have been honest. You said I was with you.
They absolutely still working on it,
Okay.
designing tests to get more information. Just speaking honestly, there are some who say I'm going to stand out of the conversation in those fields until more information is available. And there are some who say the information that we do know and have is enough for us to stand on this side of the aisle. And then there's some, I tell you one who is very, I mean, I love his work. I may not stand on the same side as him in this conversation, but Kevin Mitchell is a free will. He believes in free will wholeheartedly, and he's a evolutionary, he's a neurologist, evolutionary neurologist. But in his conversation sense, he puts it on the development of the central nervous system, that leads to, in its development, that leads to options and decisions based on a predictive model. So yeah, without a doubt, but they're still doing some studies. The study about the genes that I pulled up about the sequences they did between the chimpanzee, the Homo Neanderthal, and the Homo sapien, and the variances they found in human agency is from 2022. So that just came out. And then I got some preprints that they talked about that they dropped now. So it's an ongoing conversation, but I can tell you that for a long time, they did not apply evolutionary, the evolutionary model to behavior. It actually stayed separate. And until about right after about 1960, they started adding in evolution into the conversation on behavior. It was a big split between behavioralism and ethology. And ethology is a type of behavioralism, but they're more based on evolution. So when you say Robert Sapolsky, yes, he's a neurologist, but he actually stands under the side of ethology and behavioralism. And a prime example, we always talk about it. You can see, if you look at back in the like 50s, 60s, you should see like the scientists running around trying to capture butterflies out flying around. That's the ethologist. They say you have to study an animal in its language, in its environment to understand its behavioral practices. And so that right there is actually the evolutionary aspect coming into a conversation in which they separated it for a long time.
Okay, Logic. So you actually said no. So was you saying that it has nothing to do with evolutionary biology, the conversation, and nothing to do with psychological evolution? You're saying no evolutionary psychology. So you're actually saying no. So why are you saying no? And if that's the question, then how are they even able to put up arguments since you're saying no?
How are the philosophers able to put up arguments?
Yeah, but it's philosophy though.
So
all right, go ahead. I'm
determinism.
gonna get out. It's not my job to go ahead.
Determinism makes a lot of assumptions, right? Free will is based. I actually asked a question that I could not find throughout I ain't gonna say all the reading. I did quite a bit of reading. I did quite a bit of listening and all that kind of stuff. But when I asked the question, free from what? I feel like that's actually profound, right? What would my actions need to be free from in order to relieve me of responsibility for my actions? And so I feel like when you're trying to describe free will, compatibilism, determinism, you're almost presupposing that you have a firm idea of consciousness. You're almost supposing that you have a firm idea of the entire universe being deterministic. You're almost supposing that you have all the mechanisms of nature down pat and down to a fine minute formula where you have all the stimuli lined up and then you can put them into a formula and then begin to predict outcomes. And they're not close to that. So we are looking more like a conversation where science is attempting to weigh in on a metaphysical conversation rather than a scientific conversation, right? There's so many. That's actually was my biggest challenge trying to make this argument, right? Is once I begin to realize why people were telling me or asking me, why am I fighting against determinism? I realized, I done read too much, right? Like I almost have gotten so far into why determinism isn't true, right? To where I'm having difficulties making a compatibilist argument, which should traditionally agree with determinism. So that was actually a big challenge for me, right? So, in reality, since I can't find enough evidence to hold determinism true, right? I'm actually feel like I am not looking at a scientific hypothesis and more of just some philosophical concept that is, based or the empirical evidence simply lies in the armchairs of philosophers and not in the laboratories of scientists.
So you say all that to say, yeah, you didn't kind of answer the question why you was basically saying it's really a philosophical conversation having nothing to do with.
And you can
Okay,
use
all right.
science to weigh in on it.
Okay.
But the difficulties in finding the free will is going to be so difficult because you have to then realize free from what, right? Are you saying I have to be free from biology? Are you saying I have to be free from why do my actions have to be free from previous events in order for me to be held responsible for my actions? It goes in a very large circle that to me seems very impractical. And again, it's not something that you can reproduce in a laboratory, make a test for, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you, brothers, man. I felt like, yeah, I appreciate that conversation, man. Yeah, thank you.
Hold on one second, God Killer. Juju's gonna allow Marcus to share his screen just to address it. You got 2 minutes, Marcus, and then we're gonna get into the closing statements.
The share screen to address what?
No.
What are we doing?
No.
Hold on. What are we doing?
Use on the
Nah,
question.
you can't do that.
Sharing screen is only when you do the 15-minute presentation.
Okay, you just said yes in the back chat.
I ain't scared. Let him show.
No, Logic. Mute your mic.
Yep. Questions from the panel is over.
Okay,
we're not going back.
I misunderstood your answer in the back chat, Juju. That's
We
fine.
do that after show though and see who start crying first.
Yeah, we could do that.
The first one start crying is the one that lost.
Because I'm running out of paper here, right? We can't go back, right?
No problem.
And plus, we have a time. We don't want to make this 4 hours long. You know what I'm saying? So
I got you. So let's move forward. Logic, I'm gonna let you start the closing statement. First off, I just want to say something to both of y'all once again, and I'm gonna reiterate it. A lot of these conversations that we have in our Discourse and that we have in our voice chats is very easy with no sources. Just randomly talking with no camera on, nobody actually watching that's not a pseudo killer, to have these conversations. What you guys are doing, and I'm gonna keep referencing it, is the man in the arena. You know, I think it's very important that you get you had the audacity of intelligence to get up here and have this conversation in front of a crowd, have questions that you didn't even have an idea to answer. So I want to give y'all much respect for even doing this. Okay. It doesn't really, I know it's always going to be a winner, always going to be a loser, but to me, the fact that you put some source material together, presented your material, had an intelligent discourse, you're both winners in my book. So let me get Logic on the screen. And
So
you can go ahead and do your closing statement. You have 5 minutes.
So for my conclusion, first of all, I want to thank everybody for showing up and showing some support, and thanking Marcus. A tremendous amount, man. He's been a very, very graceful opponent in this whole thing. I think I told him this yesterday. As I look back on a lot of these circumstances, I don't think anybody's been more helpful to me structuring my argument and navigating some of the pitfalls of what it was that I'm actually trying to articulate than Marcus. And that's only because he has a strong understanding of what it is that the argument is, and he knows where I should be, right? He knows I'm not a dualist, so he actually really helped me navigate my argument out to get out of any of the dualistic I guess words that I could have possibly been using, right? So that's number one. I want to start there, and then secondly, again, I really appreciate everybody coming in, but again, towards the conversation, for my money, determinism is, I have a little bit of a distaste for determinism, right? I really feel as though, for me as a Black man, that I find myself so uncomfortable with the notion of even implying that slavery or redlining or some of the other things that we went through here in America are not moral actions, right? And then the implications of now I need to restructure how I would go about solving these issues while at the same time not having these appropriate sentiments towards actions that were directed towards my community. It's just very difficult for me. That was enough to motivate me to do the study, to get knowledgeable enough to be able to have a debate, and that's really the gist of it for me, man. I really hope that I did a good enough job explaining what it was that I'm fighting against, made it really plain on where some of my stances are when it comes to what determinism says, made it really clear on what determinism means by the inevitable, how it says the future and the past are both fixed. These were things that I felt like we really initially had some trouble with when we were talking about it in the Discord, and I hope I showed or at least pointed the direction of where you could see it for yourself and put the actual words that made a difference for me when I was interpreting or internalizing the message of what determinism actually says. And you know that's what energized me. That's what gave me a reason to fight. That's really all I got to say.
Thank you, and once again, I appreciate, like I said, the audacity to get up here and be intelligent. I appreciate it. Chilembwe, you got 5 minutes to do your closing statement. Take us home.
So, I appreciate Logic's endeavor in the conversation, right? Because I fully understand the complications of it. I think he did a lot of studying, a lot of preparation for this debate. And I think he asked some very prudent questions involving this whole conversation. There are some things that we didn't get a chance to touch on. And I believe that some of them things would help clarify part of this conversation. We can see some examples in it. The notion of free will is exactly that, to be free from prior influences. That's actually the definition. That is the definition of free will. It means to exclude those things when it's time to make a decision. My point is, through evolution, decision making isn't a human thing. It's a evolutionary thing that animals can do. And if those animals don't have the same freedom, then I'm confused. Compatibilists are definitely, Logic's argument is definitely the compatibilist argument that reward and responsibility are so important to social reality that it would be harmful to even imply that it doesn't exist. But nevertheless, we're looking at it from a prospect of why do we need to say it exists in the first place? And even if it doesn't exist, there's no guarantee that society will crumble without it. You can look at other places, Switzerland and their criminal justice system, as examples of what happens when people take a more holistic approach to human behavior. It is no doubt a difficult conversation to sit there and say that a person is not morally responsible for their actions. And subjective experiences matter. And so you can understand the complications of the conversation. But I wholeheartedly stand with evolution. I wholeheartedly stand with science. And because I do that, then I have to look at science as it is. Again, we learn our behaviors both through genetic profile as well as cultural experiences. We learn about agency through these methods, what is and what is not. And so it is a conscientious decision, you could say to yourself, to either stand with science or not. Logic is correct. When we first had this conversation, racism and slavery
30 seconds.
Okay, was his issue, and it still is. But that's why science exists, so that we can remove our biases out of the conversation and look at it as objectively as possible. And so this is one of the issues that science has, and they're working it out, you know. And so we hope that as new information comes out, as we develop further in the science and technology, we'll understand more about human behavior, and learning more about human behavior can give us an idea on how to better society as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's get everybody on the screen. Logic came up for a second. Before we get into the closure, I just want to reiterate once again, and I know I keep saying it, but there's a reason. A lot of people talk trash, and a lot of people have opinions on things. But the fact that y'all got into the arena and worked it out through discourse, I can't applaud y'all enough. I want to say to the Pseudo Killas, I appreciate the opportunity of even moderating such a high level conversation. It's a privilege, not a right, to do these kinds of things, and I don't take it lightly. Thank you, Juju, Kent, Sirius B, God Killer, Sosa, Mac Rob, and to the debaters. Thank you for respecting it. I know I can get a little constrictive sometimes, but a moderator is a thankless job. So, but I appreciate y'all for allowing me to share the screen with y'all this evening. Thank y'all.
Yeah, that's right, man. You did a beautiful job, man. And we appreciate you too for doing that, man. Appreciate Marcus and Logic, man. That joint was on fire. I know I'm gonna have to go back.
It's tight. I tell you what, it's tight.
It was so good.
This is a tight debate.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I thought it was gonna be lopsided, but hey, my boy came with some work, man. So I appreciate y'all. I ain't take this lightly, man. And we gonna have some more in the future, man. You know what I mean?
I'm glad you guys gave us another couple days to go through the material, go through the judging criteria to really make a sound decision.
Right.
So
there's no way you'll be able to
you can't make a determination tonight.
Exactly.
Not at all. Right. Outstanding performance from both debaters.
Yeah, this was fire. I just want to say one thing. I'll let you go, Logic, in a minute, but I really want the audience, the panelists, the judges, we need your feedback. What did you all think about this debate style? I mean, I thought it was great, but I want to see what other people think about it, because the dynamics made for an awesome, intellectual discourse. And I'm just happy about that.
Hey, and we got the vote. I think Ms. Tiff just put the voting in the So make sure
people's choice.
One, we gonna come back Sunday and let the judges, put their view out on who they feel won or made the best points. Check us out on TikTok, man. We getting our TikTok up and on fire. We got Instagram, Pseudo Killas, on all of those platforms. What else, Drew? We got
let me go ahead and do it one more time. You already know what it is.
Yeah, we got.
You already know what it is.
Yeah,
it is like Bobby Banger said. We have Gina Page. Let me make the correction. She's not a geneticist. Actually, Rick Kittles is, but that is her business partner, and she runs the company. But she will be here to speak with us about, all things concerning DNA testing, genetics, because she does know it. She knows the information. So yeah, we will have Gina Page here to discuss those things. Again, that would be Tuesday night, January 30th on Community of Skeptics. So please join us. And I ain't want to tell you about the Egyptologist right now, but you know, the cat's out the bag. So we definitely going to get you all a date for that and make sure you join us back here on the Pseudo Killers for that discussion. So two awesome experts, in these discussions that we've been having in the field. And I can't wait. Yeah. So we set the standards. I'm just waiting for everybody else to bring an expert. That's all. Where y'all experts at? But you
already know what time it is, man.
Yeah, we have to constantly beat that drum, right? We got to constantly apply pressure, Juju. That's what we do. Constantly apply that pressure.
You know, because we're not scared to talk to the experts. You know what I mean? We're not scared
at all.
If we got it wrong, for them to correct us. And you know, I find it very strange that people starting to argue against ChatGPT.
Listen,
but we ain't gonna get into that today.
Listen.
Hey, let's just say this, right? There's no way to lock people out of intellectual discourse, right? Impossible, right? We all have our academic sources, we all have our academic connections professionally, within our studies, within all of this. Again, right? It would be impossible for anybody to say that you're going to do that, right? So our reach may not be your reach, but we have our contacts and we have our connections. So absolutely.
Yes, indeed, man. Without further ado, man, we about almost 3 hours in, man. So we ain't gonna keep y'all all night, man. We appreciate everybody that was rocking with us in the chat. You see, we still got.
So quick question: are we gonna do an after show to talk just to go through some of the nitty gritty of it, or what are we gonna do after this?
Well, the test can't. You can set up. If you want to set up a Zoom, I'll rock it.
Okay.
I'll do it.
All right.
Yeah, awesome.
So we'll double black on your air.
Yes.
Right. Because I do have a question actually not as much of a question, just as well. It's a question for the debaters, right? What did you guys think about the discourse round? Because that's something that was a bit unique that I haven't seen in other debate formats, right? Where both debaters had a chance to sort of do direct conversations, right? 15 minutes. Right, conversational pieces. How did you guys feel about the discourse round?
Yeah, I like that. That's how some of them other debaters do it. Like I saw Bart Ehrman, I forgot who the other guy name is. Like they do their little session first, and they kind of like sit down next to each other on stage, and they just basically converse. You know what I'm saying? And so it helps you it gives a more clearer understanding of what's being talked about. If you had any. You know what I mean? Because based on the question they're asking each other, you get more time to really absorb what's being spoken about. And you know what I'm saying? So that's just pretty dope.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, right, it gives me an idea in terms of who has that command of the information. Right. When you're talking directly, you're not necessarily going, reading off a piece of paper or going off of a slide, right? You're directly confronting a person's questions, and you're conversing and sort of going off the cuff, right? That's the things for me that really tells me that you guys were prepared, and both of you guys did a really great job in the discourse round. So whoever put that in to the debate format, right? Kudos to you.
And then a closing piece, I think it's also good because I was a little actually doing it was kind of terrifying, to be honest, because I really when Marcus started asking questions, I was like, wait a minute, so how are they going to talk without questions? But what did it for me is it gets rid of the gotcha scholarship, and that's why I like the high level conversation versus a debate. A lot of these debates are, I'm just going to get you with a whole bunch of scholarship, a whole lot of sources, but if you were to pull them into what you call deep waters with a conversation, they wouldn't be able to participate without those slides. So the fact that they were able to go back and forth, it really encompasses high level intelligent conversation. So that's the piece that that I really appreciated because like you said, if you don't have a command of the conversation, you know, that'll really separate the men from the boys, or whatever that statement is. But you know, it'll separate the two who knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, and I think they had a lot of practice already too, just with the back and forth for the last couple of months in the so they probably helped each other out as far as knowing, you know, they used to talking to each other, so it wasn't like it was new or whatever like that. I like the fact that the brothers got respect for each other. They didn't get, you know, out of hand or nothing like that, and it stayed on the respect level, and they still cool to this day. So yeah, man, right on, man.
Yeah, Logic got better. Logic got better answering, you know what I'm saying, dealing with the question like that. He's a lot more smooth tonight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, boy.
I feel we put good work in. We put really good work in.
Yeah, he had on the right shirt, Muhammad Ali. He been doing a rope-a-dope for the last 2.5 months, making us think he about to talk about reparations and slavery. He came out swinging tonight.
This time I was shocked. I thought he was going to hit the slavery point.
Hey, real quick, just for housekeeping, make sure everybody gets a vote in. We're kind of like giving a little bit more time towards the end before we start the new Zoom. But just give a vote in. We'll give it about another 3 or 4 minutes. But to you guys, what did you guys think about the discourse section, Logic and Marcus?
I thought it was fun, man. The whole thing was fun, man. It was fun 4 months ago, and then the more information I gathered, it was, you know, it definitely evolved into something that deserved a debate, right? So, you know, Marcus knows, you know, realistically, he knows more about this stuff than I do, right? So I felt like I needed to ground myself in these natural processes and be able to make a natural argument, which was actually very, very difficult. It was like the more I learned, the harder it became, right? Which wasn't necessarily what I was expecting, for sure. But that particular round, right? I mean, that was really fun. It almost felt like we didn't have enough time, but you know, I think that's just a natural feeling when you're up here and you know you got so much information you want to get off, and you know the questions have, you know, the information has so many layers by that time, right? You know, it makes it difficult to ask a simple question, which worked to our favor, but it worked against time because, you know, we're having to go through these complicated layers of questions. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
I enjoyed it. I think it was very nice. You know, it's a complicated conversation, but I think Logic did a lot of study, and I studied up for it. So I think it was very good. I enjoyed it.
Sure,
all right, Juju, how much longer you want to let this run for the?
I don't know how much longer we want to run it, because I said 20 votes. We got 20 votes.
How many votes do we have? Do we have enough based on views?
We should be able to put it in the on the YouTube joint after the
leave it there. Yeah. Okay, then cool. So we'll end it at that. Let's see where we at with the vote right now, though. Where we at right now?
Still early. It's still early.
I know, but it's still early. But where we at?
I'm just playing. We had Logic 64%, Chilembwe 36.
Surprisingly.
So 68% to 36. How many votes is that so far?
64 to 36%. We got I think 23 votes.
23 votes. Okay, so we can leave it up and come back Sunday and check it out.
Yeah. No, they
all right, so Marcus, create a whole bunch of YouTube accounts. Do what you got to do. Vote for yourself. But I'm paying attention to that judged, you know, because I wanted to see what the people thought based on being layman's. But let's get into the next Zoom show. We almost at 3 hours.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I'll come back. Pseudo Killas.
Can I add real quickly, right? So, Brendan, when you asked me that question and I gave you an answer, I've been sitting here thinking about it since I answered it, right? I said Parkinson's disease, but it's
save it for the after show, Mark.
Some neurological disorder.
Because quite frankly, I've got follow-up conversations as well, right?
Save it for the after show.
Right.
Yeah, save it for the after show. 'Cause I'm sure,
Hey,
I'm sure
Juju,
Brendan got more questions.
Yeah.
Hey,
Only
Juju,
mistake
remember
I
I
made
said
this whole
that?
time.
Man, I hope I only have to do one question.
Yeah, you
by the end of
did.
this, I was like, I've got more questions.
Right.
I always pride myself on as a man that has more answers than questions. In this
Correct.
debate, now I've got
Got
more
more
questions than
Questions
answers.
been answered.
Right, which is great.
I didn't want to ask
Right.
the question because I felt like, because if you ask a question, you can stomp somebody and it
Mhm.
may sway. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what I want to really get into.
I think Unc asked a good question.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought the
that was
judges
a pretty
asked
good
great questions all the way around. I thought everything. This was
It was nice and clean. It was clean.
very well done PK presentation. But yeah.
A part of it was the way that you guys formatted it, right? Right. You guys
Save it for the after show.
enforce the whole idea. Put the sources up. You know, yeah. Let's save it for the after.
Save it for the
go
after
with that.
show.
Right.
Go
exactly.
ahead, do that cue
Let's
music.
hold the powder dry.
Like that
Right?
hot sauce, man.
Yeah.
With the hot sauce,
DQ, baby.
Who's setting it up? Who's setting it up?
I do it. Yeah.
All right, go set it up.
Make sure that's-
Banger. Hey.
Y'all should let me dirty the show up a little bit.
Nah,
Let me
you
kick
can
a
do it in
little
the after
rhyme.
show.
Let me kick a hit. Y'all know I'm here. I stay tight and shit. I'm there all day, every day.
Hot sauce,
Yeah.
ketchup.
Yeah.
Hot sauce, ketchup.
No respect for those who break their neck to keep their
Make
home
sure
in
y'all
check.
like
Be
the
sure
show,
to
man.
check the box off. I'm knocking their socks off.
I mean,
Unique flavor, stay in the bag like hot sauce.
Man, I'm finna go do it. Bye, y'all.
We don't want you to do it. You put too many rules in place. No, sir.
Right, do what?
Wait,
Yeah, Juju. No restrictions.
No restrictions. We don't want you to do it.
No rules, Juju.
Yeah, too many rules.
Oh, right.
Oh, that's the instrumental right there, yo.
Oh,
Yeah. I started with that.
Friday night juke joint.
For those who break their neck to keep their hoes in check, be sure to check the box off. How I'm knocking their socks off. Unique flavor, stay in the bag like hot sauce.
Well, that's hard right there, yo. I feel like I can rap. You know how you watch a kung fu movie or you think you can go home and do the moves?
You see. All right. Yeah, man.
Go ahead and drop a bar. Go ahead and drop some bars, Kent.
I started
Go ahead, Ken. Go ahead, Ken.
can't even come up with nothing right now.
Ken, yo.
What's up?
Been winning since 2010. They say I was getting money straight through the sin. But if you look at the scorecard, I always win.
Already.
Take out a fine chick, I take it to Den. You know what it is.
Back to catch Rick. No respect for those who break their neck to keep their hoes in check. Be sure to check the box off. How I'm knocking their socks off. Unique flavor, stay in the bag like hot sauce. DQ.
We're gonna run it back. Nah, I was playing. Hey, so look,
It's obvious the only person that got bars on the Pseudo Killas is DQ.
yeah, he got him. He got him.
Gave all I had.
He got him. Yeah, I mean,
Man.
Pseudo Killer official, Miss Tiff in the building, man. What's up, man? You all right?
What's up? I just want to say thank you, DQ. I'm the one who requested the instrumentals. I always come with the great ideas. All that.
He was talking with the holes. I can't even
Is
use
my
it 'cause he got
arm
the
long
holes
enough
on
to pat myself on the back?
What's up, Miss
right.
Tiffany? I'm tired of y'all
Not-
niggas. What's
not
up,
only-
man?
Arm? How long is her arm?
Not only that, but congratulations, Logic. I always knew.
Congratulations on what?
Hold it
The baby
down.
on
What?
early congratulations.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
She's giving the congratulations for the people's vote, right?
That's
Well,
right.
the people,
That's
you
right.
know, when the people vote for it,
people's
mean
vote.
you lost, yo. The
No,
people,
the people's vote matters.
That's usually
No,
a
that's
bad
the
sign.
rule, yo.
It's
Yeah, you
definitely
always
usually a bad sign.
do they think that's the official? You know what I mean?
what?
Definitely
Man,
usually
whenever
bad
the
sign.
people, yo, the people be
The
wrong.
people's
it's two
vote is a
left people.
tell. That's
Yeah,
a
I
tell.
just wanted to gloat a little bit
That's a tell, yo.
and give my boy Logic his congratulations.
Oh, wow, really?
Did that. But also congratulations to you too, Marcus. You also did a good job, but Logic just did that thing. So
Logic. Hey, Logic, you messed up when I asked the question. You meant how you gonna go that route with it? You supposed to say yo. You went with that.
He killed that question. He killed it.
The evolution.
I was surprised. I was surprised.
I was honest.
He said no, and here's why.